The Synesthesia Symphony, a novel in 50 movements, a chilling exploration of perception, trauma, and the power of the human mind. Introduction. The world is not as it seems, or rather, it is not as we are taught to see it. Our senses, those faithful interpreters of reality, are not always the objective observers we believe them to be. They can be tricked, manipulated, even weaponized. And for those with synesthesia, those whose senses intertwine in extraordinary ways, the line between reality and perception becomes even more blurred. This is the story of Derry, Maine, a seemingly ordinary town where the extraordinary lurks beneath the surface. It is the story of a group of synesthetes, their gifts turned into a curse by a malevolent entity that feeds on their heightened perceptions, their sensory symphony twisted into a cacophony of terror. But it is also a story of resilience, of the enduring human spirit, of the power of the mind to overcome even the darkest of forces. It is a journey of self-discovery, of confronting fear, of embracing difference, of harnessing the very senses that threaten to consume them. Through a series of chilling encounters and psychological explorations, the synesthetes of Derry will uncover a hidden history of trauma and manipulation, a conspiracy that reaches back to the very foundations of their town. They will learn to navigate the distorted landscape of their senses, to challenge their deepest fears, to find strength in their shared experiences, and to ultimately reclaim their perceptions, their minds, their very selves. This is not just a story about synesthesia. It is a story about the human experience, about the power and fragility of perception, about the enduring struggle between light and darkness, between fear and hope, between control and freedom. It is a symphony of the senses, a testament to the beauty and terror, the vulnerability and strength of the human spirit. Welcome to Derry. Welcome to the Synesthesia Symphony, Part 1 on The Overture. Chapter 1, The Whispers and the Static. The hum was almost imperceptible, a low thrumming beneath the surface of Derry, Maine, like a heartbeat struggling to maintain rhythm. It wasn't a sound Alara could pinpoint, not exactly. It was more a feeling, a vibration that resonated deep within her bones, a constant awareness of unseen connections. Derry, to Alara, wasn't just a collection of houses and streets. It was a symphony, a complex orchestration of sensory input that most people filtered out, but which for her played out in vibrant, sometimes overwhelming detail. Tonight, the symphony was discordant. The usual comforting cello of the wind rustling through the pines was laced with a high-pitched whine, a nervous violin note that spoke of unease. The streetlights, normally a warm amber oboe, flickered with a sickly green tinge, a sour clarinet blast that made her stomach churn. And the static was screaming. Alara sat on the porch swing, the cool night air prickling her skin. She held a battered old transistor radio to her ear, not really listening to the crackling static that filled the speakers, but feeling it. For Alara, static wasn't just white noise. It was a canvas of swirling colors, a chaotic ballet of light and shadow. Normally, it was a meaningless jumble, a background hum to the real music of the world. Tonight, though, the colors were forming patterns, coalescing into shapes that made her breath catch in her throat. Crimson streaks pulsed like angry veins, intertwined with sickly yellow tendrils that writhed and twisted. The overall impression was one of decay, of something rotten festering beneath the surface. And within the chaos she heard whispers, not with her ears. Not exactly. The whispers were more like impressions, thoughts that seeped into her mind through the colors, through the vibrations. They were fragmented, disjointed, like snippets of a conversation overheard in a crowded room. Lost, hungry, coming. Alara shivered, not from the cold, but from a deep primal fear that resonated with the crimson pulses in the static. She knew, with a certainty that settled in the pit of her stomach like a lead weight, that these whispers weren't just random noise. They were a warning. She turned the dial on the radio, trying to tune it to a clear station, anything to drown out the static, to silence the whispers. But it was no use. Every frequency, every station, was filled with the same swirling colors, the same chilling impressions. The static was everywhere, Inside her head, outside in the town, a pervasive hum that threatened to drown out everything else. A dog barked in the distance, a sharp, staccato sound that Alara saw as a jagged shard of blue glass. It startled her, breaking her concentration on the static, if only for a moment. She looked out at the street, bathed in the sickly green glow of the streetlights. Everything seemed normal, ordinary, but Alara knew better. The whispers in the static, the unsettling colors, the discordant symphony of Derry, they were all telling her the same thing. Something was coming, something dark, and it was hungry. Chapter 2. Unlocking the Code. Dr. Alistair Thorne's office was a study in controlled chaos. Books lined the walls, overflowing from shelves and stacked precariously on every available surface. Strange artifacts sat nestled amongst the volumes. A Tibetan singing bowl, a collection of antique keys, a framed butterfly specimen. The air hummed with the faint scent of sandalwood and something vaguely metallic. It was a space that felt both intensely intellectual and subtly unsettling, much like the man himself. Thorne, with his sharp, intelligent eyes and a perpetually amused expression, gestured towards a worn leather armchair. "Alara, I presume? I've been expecting you." Alara, still rattled by the whispers and the static, sat cautiously. "You know about what I hear?" Thorne chuckled, a low, rumbling sound. "My dear girl, I've made a career out of understanding. What people don't hear, what they don't see, what they choose to ignore. Synesthesia is merely one fascinating facet of the human perceptual system. Most people experience the world through a limited, pre-programmed filter. You, Alara, are accessing the raw data." He steepled his fingers. "Think of your brain as a highly sophisticated computer. It receives an immense amount of sensory information, but it only processes a fraction of it, filtering out what it deems irrelevant. Synesthetes like yourself have a less restrictive firewall, allowing more of that raw data to flood into conscious awareness. That's why you experience colors with sounds, tastes with textures, and whispers in the static." Alara frowned. "But it's, overwhelming. I can't control it." Thorne smiled. "Control, my dear, is an illusion. We don't control the weather. We learn to navigate it. The same applies to your synesthesia. You can't eliminate it, but you can learn to understand it, to interpret its language, and even to influence it." He rose and walked over to a whiteboard, picking up a marker. "Let's talk about sensory anchors," he said, drawing a circle. "Every experience, every sensation, is linked to a network of associations. A certain smell might remind you of your grandmother's house. A particular song might evoke a specific memory. These are sensory anchors. They're powerful triggers that can influence your emotional state, your thoughts, even your perceptions." He drew another circle intersecting the first. "Now, imagine you want to create a positive emotional state, say calmness. You could associate that feeling with a specific sensory input. The warmth of the sun on your skin, the scent of lavender, a particular melody. By repeatedly pairing the feeling with the sensory input, you create an anchor. Later, when you need to access that feeling of calmness, you simply recall the sensory input, and the associated emotion will follow." He looked at Alara. "Your synesthesia works in a similar way. The colors you see with sounds, the tastes you experience with textures, these are all sensory anchors. They're linked to specific meanings, specific emotions, and by understanding these links, by learning the code of your synesthesia, you can begin to decipher the messages hidden within the sensory chaos." Alara was starting to grasp the concept. "So, the whispers and the static, they're not just random noise. They're connected to something, some meaning." "Precisely," Thorne said. "And by understanding the colors, the patterns, the submodalities of your synesthetic experience, the texture of the sound, the intensity of the color, the location of the sensation, you can begin to decipher the message. You can begin to unlock the code." He leaned closer, his eyes glinting with excitement. "And once you understand the code, Alara, you can begin to rewrite it." Chapter 3. The Color of Fear. Sleep offered no escape. The static followed Alara into her dreams, morphing into a swirling vortex of colors that sucked her in, down into a suffocating abyss. The whispers intensified, no longer fragmented and disjointed but coalescing into a single chilling voice. It was a child's voice, filled with a grief so profound, so ancient, that it resonated deep within Alara's soul. It spoke of loss, of betrayal, of a darkness that consumed everything in its path. And as it spoke, the colors in Alara's dream shifted, taking on new, terrifying hues she had never witnessed before. A sickly green, the color of bile and decay, pulsed around the edges of her vision, its edges jagged and sharp like broken glass. It was a color that tasted of sour regret, of opportunities missed and promises broken. Intertwined with the green was a deep, throbbing violet, the color of bruises and old blood, a color that smelled of iron and ozone, a color that felt like a suffocating weight on her chest. And then there was the black. Not just any black, but a black so profound, so absolute that it seemed to absorb all other colors, all other sensations. It was a black that tasted of ash and despair, a black that smelled of death and decay, a black that felt like the cold, unyielding grip of oblivion. The child's voice continued to whisper, its words painting a horrifying picture in Alara's mind. It spoke of a town built on a foundation of secrets, of a darkness that fed on fear and pain, of an entity that slumbered beneath the surface, waiting to be awakened. Alara thrashed in her sleep, trying to escape the suffocating colors, chilling whispers. But the dream held her captive, forcing her to witness the unfolding horror. She saw images of children vanishing without a trace, their laughter swallowed by the black. She saw families torn apart by grief and suspicion, their love twisted into fear and paranoia. She saw the town itself succumbing to the darkness, its vibrant colors fading into a monochrome wasteland. And then, she saw the entity. It wasn't a creature of flesh and blood, not a monster with fangs and claws. It was something far more insidious, something that existed in the spaces between senses, in the cracks of perception. It was a being of pure darkness, a manifestation of fear and despair, a predator that fed on the very essence of human experience. Alara woke with a gasp, her heart pounding, her body drenched in sweat. The colors of the dream lingered. A ghostly afterimage burned into her retinas. The child's voice still echoed in her mind, its whispers a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of Derry. She knew now that the whispers in the static were not just a warning. They were a plea for help, a desperate cry for salvation from a town trapped in a cycle of fear and loss. And she, with her synesthesia, with her ability to see the colors of fear, was the only one who could hear it. Chapter 4. Rewriting the Script. The lingering hues of the nightmare clung to Alara like a shroud. The violet of bruises, the sickly green of decay, the absolute black of oblivion. They were more than just colors. They were physical sensations, tastes, smells, emotions that threatened to overwhelm her. She found herself instinctively recoiling from shadows, gagging at the phantom taste of ash, her heart pounding with a fear that seemed to have taken root in her very DNA. She found Dr. Thorne in his office, surrounded by his usual controlled chaos. He looked at her, his expression a mixture of concern and something akin to excitement. The dream was vivid, I presume. Alara nodded, unable to speak, the memory of the entity still fresh in her mind. Fear, Alara, Thorne said, is a learned response. It's a story we tell ourselves about the world, a narrative woven from past experiences and future anxieties. But narratives can be rewritten. That's what we're going to do. He gestured towards a comfortable chair. Sit. Let's talk about reframing. Alara sat, still trembling slightly. Imagine, Thorne began, that you're watching a movie. The scene is terrifying. A monster lurking in the shadows, a victim screaming in fear. Your body reacts. Your heart races. Your palms sweat. You might even want to look away. But then, the director cuts to a different scene, revealing that the monster is just a costumed actor. The victim is laughing with the crew. Suddenly, the fear dissipates. The narrative has changed. He continued, reframing is like that. It's about changing the context, the perspective, the narrative surrounding a particular experience. It's about recognizing that our interpretations of events are not fixed, but fluid, malleable. Alara frowned. How does that apply to what I saw? Let's take the color violet, Thorne said. You associate it with bruises, with old blood, with a feeling of suffocation. That's one interpretation. But violet is also the color of royalty, of wisdom, of spiritual enlightenment. It's the color of the night sky, filled with infinite possibilities. You see? He picked up a piece of amethyst from his desk. The sensory input, the color violet, remains the same. But by changing the context, by focusing on different associations, you can alter your emotional response. You can choose a different narrative. He then moved to the whiteboard and drew a line. This line represents your sensory experience, the raw data. Below the line are your interpretations, the stories you tell yourself about that data. The goal is to separate the two, to recognize that your interpretations are not inherent in the sensory experience itself, but are created by your own mind. He pointed to the colors she'd seen in her dream. The sickly green, the black, the violet, these are just colors. They have no inherent meaning. Their meaning comes from the associations you've made with them. And those associations can be changed? How? Alara asked. Through conscious effort, Thorne replied. Through repeated exposure to the sensory input, coupled with positive affirmations and alternative interpretations. It's about retraining your brain, rewriting the script. It's about choosing a different narrative. He looked at her intently. You are not a victim of your synesthesia, Alara. You are not defined by your fears. You have the power to choose how you experience the world. You have the power to rewrite the script. He handed her the amethyst crystal. Hold this. Focus on the violet color. Breathe deeply. Now tell me what other associations you can make with this color. Think of positive memories, happy experiences. Let's begin to rewrite the narrative, one color at a time. Chapter 5. The First Note. Armed with Dr. Thorne's reframing techniques, Alara ventured out into Derry, her senses still heightened, but now tempered with a newfound awareness. The colors were still vibrant, the sounds still intense, but she was no longer a passive recipient of this sensory symphony. She was learning to conduct it, to shape the music of her perception. She started small, focusing on individual sensations, consciously choosing alternative interpretations. The sickly green of the streetlights became the color of new growth, of spring leaves unfurling. The violet shadows transformed into the hues of twilight, a time of mystery and magic. Even the black, the color of oblivion, began to yield, revealing hints of deep indigo, the color of the night sky, vast and full of possibilities. But it was the people that truly fascinated Alara. As she walked through the town square, she noticed subtle shifts in the colors surrounding certain individuals, a shimmering aura that seemed to resonate with their emotions, their thoughts, their very essence. It was as if their synesthesia, previously hidden beneath the surface, was now becoming visible, drawn out by the rising tide of sensory disturbance in Derry. There was the baker, Mr. Henderson, whose hands glowed with a warm, golden light as he kneaded dough, the scent of yeast and sugar swirling around him like a comforting melody. There was Mrs. Peterson, the librarian, whose words shimmered with emerald green as she read aloud to a group of children, her voice a soothing balm to Alara's frayed nerves. And then there was the young man sitting on a bench, sketching furiously, in a notebook. His name, she soon learned, was Gabriel, and his synesthesia was unlike anything she had ever encountered. As he drew, the lines on the page seemed to leap out at him, transforming into three-dimensional objects that he could manipulate with his mind. A cube unfolded into a flower, a spiral morphed into a bird, the boundaries between reality and imagination blurring before her eyes. Alara found herself drawn to these people, to their unique abilities, to the way they navigated the world with a sensory awareness that most people could only dream of. They formed a tentative community, a support group for those who had long felt like outsiders, freaks, anomalies. They shared their experiences, their fears, their hopes, their newfound sense of purpose. But their growing awareness, their burgeoning powers, did not go unnoticed. There were whispers in the town, rumors of strange happenings, of people seeing things that couldn't possibly be real. Fear, like a contagious disease, began to spread, infecting those who lacked the understanding, the tools to navigate the shifting sensory landscape. Ilara and her fellow synesthetes found themselves caught in a dangerous game, their abilities both a gift and a curse. They were the first notes in a symphony of the senses, a symphony that was growing louder, more complex, more unpredictable with each passing day. And as the music swelled, they knew that something was listening, something ancient, malevolent, something that was drawn to their power, their unique connection to the hidden symphony of the world. Part 2. The Discord. Chapter 6. The Taste of Terror. The shift was subtle at first, a slight distortion in the sensory landscape, a sour note in the usually sweet melody of birdsong, a gritty texture to the smooth surface of polished wood. But then, the distortions amplified, twisting familiar sensations into something grotesque, something terrifying. The synesthesia, it seemed, was no longer confined to Ilara and her small group. It was spreading, like a contagion of the senses, infecting the very fabric of Derry. The first sign of widespread trouble came during the town's annual summer picnic. The air, usually thick with the aroma of barbecue and freshly cut grass, was suddenly laced with a metallic tang, a scent that Ilara recognized as the violet hue of fear. The laughter of children sounded tinny, distorted, like a record playing at the wrong speed. And the food was a nightmare. Mrs. Higgins' famous apple pie, usually a symphony of cinnamon and sweet fruit, tasted of rust and decay, the crust crumbling in Ilara's mouth like ash. The juicy red strawberries transformed into pulsating crimson orbs that tasted of blood and raw meat. Even the lemonade, normally a refreshing citrus burst, felt like shards of ice scraping against her teeth, each sip accompanied by a phantom scream echoing in her mind. Ilara watched in horror as other picnickers began to react. A man gagged, spitting out a mouthful of potato salad, his face contorted in disgust. A woman shrieked, clutching her ears as the cheerful bluegrass band suddenly sounded like a cacophony of screeching metal. The children, their faces pale and drawn, stared at their plates with wide, terrified eyes. The sensory assault wasn't limited to taste and sound. The vibrant colors of the picnic blankets morphed into swirling patterns of nausea-inducing greens and yellows. The gentle breeze felt like icy needles pricking their skin. The warmth of the sun transformed into a burning, oppressive weight. The town's residents, unprepared for this sudden sensory upheaval, descended into chaos. Panic erupted as people struggled to make sense of the distorted reality. Fights broke out over perceived slights, fueled by the amplified aggression of the distorted sounds and smells. A wave of nausea swept through the crowd, sending people scrambling for the restrooms, their stomachs churning with the taste of terror. Ilara, despite her own heightened senses, felt a surge of adrenaline. This wasn't just a random sensory overload. This was targeted, deliberate. The entity, she realized, was amplifying the synesthesia, weaponizing it, turning the town's senses against itself. She looked at Gabriel, his face etched with concern. His hands, usually glowing with the warm light of creation, flickered with a sickly green, the color of poison. "It's spreading," he whispered, his voice trembling. "It's using our gifts against us." Ilara knew they had to act quickly. If they didn't find a way to control this sensory contagion, Derry would be consumed by madness. A town driven to the brink by the taste of terror, the sound of pain, the sight of fear. The symphony had turned into a nightmare, and they were running out of time to rewrite the score. Chapter 7. Submodality Mastery. The chaos at the picnic served as a stark reminder of the entity's growing power. It wasn't enough to simply reframe individual sensations. They needed to understand the underlying structure of their synesthesia, the intricate web of connections that linked their senses. They needed to master the submodalities. Ilara and Gabriel, along with a few other synesthetes from Derry, found themselves back in Dr. Thorne's cluttered office. The air, usually thick with the scent of sandalwood, now carried a faint metallic tang, a reminder of the fear that permeated the town. The entity, Thorne began, his voice grim, is exploiting the submodalities. It's not just distorting the primary senses, but the nuances, the subtle details that give each sensation its unique character. That's why the apple pie didn't just taste bad, it tasted of rust and decay. It's why the music didn't just sound unpleasant, it felt like screeching metal. He picked up a tuning fork and struck it. A clear, resonant tone filled the room. "This sound," he said, "isn't just a single note. It has texture, timbre, resonance. It's not just loud or soft, but also sharp or smooth, bright or dull. These are submodalities. They are the building blocks of sensory experience." He then pointed to a color chart on the wall. "This red," he said, indicating a crimson square, "is not just red. It's a particular shade of red. It's warm, vibrant, intense. It has a certain luminosity, a certain saturation. These are all submodalities of color." Thorne explained that every sensation, regardless of the primary sense, had a complex network of submodalities. Sound had texture, rough, smooth, timbre, bright, dark, and location, near, far. Color had hue, red, blue, saturation, vibrant, pale, and brightness, light, dark. Touch had pressure, light, firm, temperature, hot, cold, and texture, rough, smooth. The entity, Thorne continued, is manipulating these submodalities, twisting them, distorting them, turning them into weapons of fear. To fight back, you need to understand how these submodalities work, how they connect to your emotions, your memories, your very sense of self. He then began to guide them through a series of exercises designed to heighten their awareness of submodalities. He had them listen to different sounds, focusing on the texture, the timbre, the location. He showed them different colors, asking them to describe the subtle variations in hue, saturation, and brightness. He had them touch different objects, paying attention to the pressure, the temperature, the texture. "Close your eyes," he instructed Alara. "I'm going to play a sound. Don't just tell me what it is. Describe it. Is it sharp or smooth? Is it high-pitched or low? Does it feel like it's coming from the left or the right? What is the texture of the sound?" Alara listened intently. It's a scraping sound," she said. "It's rough, like metal on metal. It's high-pitched, almost piercing. It feels like it's coming from above me." "Good," Thorne said. "Now, imagine changing the submodalities. Imagine the sound becoming smooth, low-pitched, distant. How does that change your emotional response?" Alara concentrated. It feels less threatening," she said. "It's still there, but it's not as jarring." Thorne smiled. "That's the key, Alara. By consciously manipulating the submodalities, you can change your perception of the sensation and, therefore, your emotional response. You can take control of your senses instead of being controlled by them." He looked at each of them in turn. "Mastery of the submodalities is essential. It's the only way to fight back against the entity, to reclaim your senses, to rewrite the symphony of fear that threatens to consume Derry." Chapter 8. The Grapheme Color Curse. Old man Hemmings had always been an eccentric. A fixture in Derry's historical society, he spent his days surrounded by dusty books and faded photographs, muttering to himself about dates and deeds, his pale, blue eyes flickering with an intensity that bordered on madness. Most people dismissed him as a harmless crank, but Alara and the others had always sensed something different about him, a hidden depth beneath the surface of his rambling pronouncements. Now, as the sensory distortions intensified, Hemmings' eccentricity took on a new, terrifying significance. His grapheme color synesthesia, once a quirky personality trait, became a window into a hidden history of Derry, a history steeped in blood and darkness. Alara and Gabriel found him in the archives of the Historical Society, surrounded by piles of ancient documents. His eyes, usually a faded blue, now blazed with a vibrant, almost electric shade of turquoise, the color of lightning and ancient secrets. He spoke in a rapid, disjointed manner, his words punctuated by gasps and shudders, as if he were reading from a scroll written in a language of pain. "The colors," he rasped, his voice hoarse. "They're everywhere. In the names, the dates, the places, they tell a story. A terrible story." He pointed to a faded map of Derry, its lines and labels shimmering with a sickly yellow. The color of decay and deceit. The founders, now they knew. They built this town on a nexus, a point of convergence. He traced the outline of the town with a trembling finger. Each street, each building, aligned to amplify the power. He picked up a handwritten chronicle, its pages filled with elegant calligraphy. As he read, the letters seemed to writhe and twist, their colors shifting from a vibrant gold to a bloody crimson, the color of sacrifice and ancient rituals. The entity, it feeds on fear, on pain, on the dissonance of the senses. He gasped, clutching his chest. The founders, they made a pact, a bargain. They offered their senses, their children, to appease the darkness. The room seemed to grow colder, the air thick with a sense of dread. Alara and Gabriel exchanged a horrified look. Hemmings's synesthesia was revealing a terrifying truth, a hidden history of Derry that had been buried beneath layers of denial and forgetfulness. The town, it seemed, was not just a random location. It was a carefully constructed trap, a conduit for the entity's power, a place where the boundaries between the senses were deliberately blurred, where the symphony of perception could be easily manipulated, distorted, weaponized. Hemming's voice grew weaker, his words fading into a whisper. The colors, they warn, they show the truth. But the truth is a curse. He slumped back in his chair, his eyes losing their vibrant hue, fading back to a dull, lifeless blue. The documents on the table seemed to lose their color as well, the letters returning to their normal, mundane form. Hemmings, it seemed, had exhausted himself, his synesthesia momentarily silenced by the strain of revealing the town's dark secret. Alara and Gabriel were left to grapple with the implications of his revelation. Derry was not just a town. It was a prison, a carefully constructed cage designed to trap them, to amplify their synesthesia, to make them vulnerable to the entity's influence. And the history, the very foundation of their community, was a testament to the entity's power, a chilling reminder of the sacrifices that had been made to appease the darkness. They knew now that they weren't just fighting for their own survival, but for the soul of Derry, for the chance to break free from the grapheme color curse that had haunted the town for generations. Chapter 9. Anchoring the Abyss. The revelations from Hemmings had shaken Alara and Gabriel to their core. The knowledge that Derry was built on a foundation of fear, that their synesthesia was not just a gift, but a potential curse, threatened to overwhelm them. The sensory chaos in the town intensified, the taste of terror becoming almost constant, the sound of pain echoing in their minds. They needed a lifeline, a way to anchor themselves in the midst of the storm. Back in Dr. Thorne's office, the atmosphere was heavy with tension. The usual clutter seemed amplified, each object radiating its own distinct sensory signature, a cacophony of textures, colors, and smells that assaulted their senses. "We need to talk about anchoring," Thorne said, his voice cutting through the sensory overload. He gestured towards a whiteboard, where he had drawn a series of interconnected circles. "As I explained before," he began, "anchors are associations between specific sensory inputs and emotional states. They're like Pavlovian reflexes for the mind. You experience a trigger, and the associated emotion follows automatically." He pointed to one of the circles. "This," he said, "represents a desired emotional state. Calm, focus, resilience. These are essential in the current climate. We need to create anchors for these states, so you can access them when you need them most." He then pointed to another circle. "This represents a sensory trigger, a touch, a smell, a sound, even a visual image. The key is to choose a trigger that is readily accessible, something you can easily evoke in any situation. Thorn explained that the process of creating an anchor involved several steps. First, they needed to identify the desired emotional state and the corresponding sensory trigger. Then, they needed to amplify the emotional state to make it as intense as possible. Finally, they needed to link the trigger to the peak of the emotional experience. "Let's start with calm," Thorn said. "Imagine a time when you felt truly calm, completely at peace. What did you see? What did you hear? What did you feel?" Alara closed her eyes, trying to recall a moment of tranquility. She remembered sitting by the ocean as a child, the gentle rhythm of the waves, the salty smell of the sea air, the warmth of the sun on her skin. "Good," Thorn said. "Now, choose a sensory trigger. It could be a physical touch, like pressing your thumb and forefinger together, or a visual image like a peaceful landscape. Something simple, something you can easily recall." Alara chose the feeling of the smooth amethyst crystal in her hand, the same one Thorn had given her earlier. "Now," Thorn continued, "bring back the feeling of calm. Imagine the ocean, the warmth of the sun, the sound of the waves. Feel the peace spreading through your body. And as you reach the peak of that feeling, activate your trigger. Hold the amethyst tightly in your hand." They repeated the process several times, strengthening the connection between the trigger and the emotional state. Thorn explained that the more they practiced, the stronger the anchor would become. He then guided them through creating anchors for other essential states: focus, resilience, courage. He emphasized the importance of choosing triggers that were personal to them, that resonated with their individual experiences. "These anchors," Thorn said, "are your lifeline in the sensory chaos. When the fear becomes overwhelming, when the pain is unbearable, you can use these triggers to access the emotional states you need to survive. They are your tools for navigating the abyss." He looked at them intently. "But remember," he cautioned, "anchors are not magic. They require practice, dedication, and a conscious effort to maintain. They are a tool, not a solution. You must still learn to master your synesthesia, to understand the language of your senses. But these anchors will give you the strength, the resilience, the clarity you need to face the darkness that threatens to consume Derry." Chapter 10. The sound of silence. Sarah, unlike Alara and the others, lived in a world of silence. Born deaf, she experienced the world not through sound, but through a heightened symphony of other senses. Her synesthesia manifested in a unique way. Colors weren't tied to sounds, but to textures. Emotions had distinct smells, and the absence of auditory input amplified everything else, making her perception of reality incredibly vivid, almost overwhelming. Before the sensory distortions began plaguing Derry, Sarah's world was a rich tapestry. The rough texture of bark was a deep brown, the smooth surface of glass a cool blue. Joy smelled of freshly baked bread, sadness of damp earth. She navigated the world with an intricate understanding of these sensory cues, her silence a source of strength, not a weakness. But now, the silence had become a terrifying vulnerability. The entity, it seemed, was targeting the gaps in perception, exploiting the absence of sound to amplify the other senses to an unbearable degree. Sarah's tactile synesthesia became excruciating. The rough texture of the sidewalk scraped against her skin like sandpaper, each step sending shivers of pain up her spine. The smooth surface of her phone felt clammy, almost slimy, triggering a wave of nausea. The world, once a tactile playground, became a source of constant torment. Her olfactory synesthesia, usually a subtle background hum, became overpowering. The smell of fear, once a faint metallic tang, became a suffocating cloud that clung to her, making her heart race. The scent of the entity, previously undetectable, now permeated the air, a cloying mix of decay and ozone that made her gag. She couldn't escape it. It was everywhere, invading her senses, her mind. But the most terrifying amplification was in her visual synesthesia. Colors, no longer just tied to textures, began to pulsate with an inner light, radiating outwards, blurring the lines between objects, between reality and hallucination. The colors of fear, The deep violets and sickly greens became so intense they seemed to burn her retinas. The entity's presence manifested as a shifting kaleidoscope of black, a void that seemed to suck all light, all hope from the world. Sarah, trapped in her silent world, had no way to filter out the sensory onslaught. The absence of sound, her usual anchor, became her prison. She was bombarded by tactile sensations that felt like physical assaults, olfactory experiences that triggered waves of nausea, and visual hallucinations that threatened to shatter her sanity. She tried to use the anchoring techniques Dr. Thorne had taught them, focusing on the smooth texture of her amethyst pendant to evoke a sense of calm. But the anchor was weak, overwhelmed by the amplified sensory input. The amethyst felt like ice against her skin, the coolness unable to penetrate the burning heat of fear. Sarah was a canary in the coal mine, her heightened senses making her the first to feel the full force of the entity's power. She was a living testament to the entity's cruelty, its ability to exploit vulnerability, to twist strength into weakness. And as she struggled to navigate her distorted reality, she knew that if she succumbed, if the silence became too much to bear, she would become another victim, another note in the entity's symphony of terror. Chapter 11. Reframing the Nightmare. Sarah's plight served as a grim catalyst. The group, huddled in Dr. Thorne's office, understood the urgency. They weren't just dealing with a sensory distortion. They were facing a psychological assault. The entity was preying on their deepest fears, weaponizing their vulnerabilities. Reframing, they realized, wasn't just about managing individual sensations. It was about confronting the core of their trauma, rewriting the narrative of their fear. Thorne, his face etched with a mixture of concern and determination, began. The entity is feeding on your fear, on the emotional charge attached to your sensory experiences. To break free, you must sever that connection. You must reframe the nightmare. He explained that trauma wasn't just about the event itself, but about the meaning they assigned to it. A traumatic experience, he said, leaves an imprint on the mind, a narrative woven from fear, pain, and helplessness. This narrative becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, shaping your perceptions, your reactions, your very sense of self. He turned to Alara. Let's take your dream, Alara. The colors, the whispers, the entity. These are all symbols, representations of your deepest fears. They're not inherently terrifying. Their meaning comes from the story you tell yourself about them. Alara shivered, the memory of the dream still vivid. But it felt so real, so evil. That's the power of the narrative, Thorne countered. Your mind created a story, and your body reacted accordingly. But you have the power to rewrite that story. You can choose a different interpretation. He then guided them through a process of deconstructing the traumatic narrative. He asked them to recall the event, not just the sensory details, but also the thoughts and emotions they experienced. He encouraged them to examine the underlying beliefs that fueled their fear. What did you tell yourself during the dream, Alara? Thorne asked. That I was helpless, she whispered. That I was trapped. And is that true? Thorne challenged. Are you truly helpless? Have you not already demonstrated resilience, a willingness to fight? Alara hesitated. I suppose not. Exactly, Thorne said. Your narrative is based on a limiting belief, a false assumption about your own power. Now let's challenge that belief. What evidence do you have that contradicts it? He then helped them reframe the traumatic experience, assigning new meanings to the sensory details, focusing on their strengths, their resilience, their capacity for growth. The black, he said, referring to the color that symbolized oblivion in Alara's dream, can also represent the unknown, the potential for transformation. It's not just the absence of light, but the fertile ground from which new things can emerge. He emphasized that reframing wasn't about denying the pain or pretending it didn't happen. It was about acknowledging the experience, accepting the emotions, and then choosing a new perspective, a perspective that empowered them, that gave them agency. The entity wants you to remain trapped in the narrative of fear, Thorne said. It wants you to believe that you are helpless, that you are doomed. But you have the power to choose a different story. You have the power to reframe the nightmare. He then led them through a series of exercises using visualization, affirmations, and emotional release techniques to solidify the new narratives. He stressed that reframing was an ongoing process, a continuous practice of challenging limiting beliefs and choosing empowering interpretations. This, he said, is not a quick fix. It takes time, effort, and a willingness to confront your deepest fears, but it is the key to breaking free from the entity's control. It is the path to transforming fear into a source of strength, trauma into resilience. Chapter 12. The Spatial Sequence Trap. Professor Elias Thorne, a brilliant mathematician with a peculiar form of synesthesia, saw numbers not as abstract symbols, but as physical entities occupying specific locations in space. His number space? Synesthesia allowed him to visualize complex equations as intricate geometric structures, a gift that had propelled him to the forefront of his field. But now, that same gift had become a dangerous trap. As the sensory distortions intensified in Derry, Elias's number space world began to warp and twist. The familiar order of numbers in his mind, once a source of comfort and clarity, became a chaotic jumble. Equations morphed into grotesque pulsating shapes, their angles sharp and threatening, their dimensions distorted and unpredictable. The entity, it seemed, was using the town's distorted senses to infiltrate Elias's unique perception of reality. The geometric patterns he saw were no longer just representations of mathematical concepts. They were becoming real, tangible, and terrifying. One evening, while working late in his study, Elias noticed a strange anomaly in his number space. A series of prime numbers, usually arranged in a neat linear sequence, began to shift, forming a complex three-dimensional structure that pulsed with a faint violet light, the color of fear. He recognized the pattern. It was a fractal, an infinitely repeating geometric shape that he had once studied but never fully understood. Now it was manifesting in his synesthetic space, growing larger, more intricate, more menacing with each passing moment. He tried to retreat, to push the fractal back into the realm of abstract mathematics, but it was no use. The entity had seized control of his number space, turning his gift against him. The fractal began to solidify, its edges becoming sharp and defined, its violet light intensifying. It was no longer just a visual hallucination. It was a physical presence in his mind, a prison built from numbers and geometry. Elias found himself trapped within the fractal, its intricate design a labyrinth of infinite corridors and impossible angles. He tried to navigate its complex structure, to find a way out, but every path led back to the same terrifying patterns. The numbers themselves became his jailers, their sharp edges cutting into his mind, their relentless sequence driving him to the brink of madness. He realized with growing horror that the fractal wasn't just a random pattern. It was a representation of the entity's influence, its power over the town, its ability to distort reality, to trap people within their own perceptions. And he, Elias Thorne, the brilliant mathematician, was trapped within its intricate design, a prisoner of his own mind, a victim of the spatial sequence trap. He tried to use his mathematical knowledge to break free, to find a logical flaw in the fractal structure, a way to unravel its complex geometry. But the entity had anticipated his every move, twisting the numbers, shifting the angles, making escape impossible. As the violet light of the fractal intensified, Elias felt his sanity slipping away. The numbers, once his friends, his tools, his passion, had become his tormentors. Their endless sequence a chilling reminder of his helplessness, his vulnerability, his impending doom. The entity had found a way to weaponize his genius, turning his greatest strength into his ultimate downfall. Chapter 13. Timeline Therapy for Trauma. Elias's entrapment in the fractal prison underscored a crucial point. The entity wasn't just manipulating senses, it was feeding on unresolved trauma. The fear, the pain, the lingering echoes of past hurts were the fuel that powered its growing influence. To truly combat the entity, they needed to address the root of the problem, the emotional wounds that lay buried beneath the surface. Dr. Thorne, recognizing the urgency, introduced the concept of timeline therapy. The entity, he explained, thrives on emotional resonance. Unresolved traumas act like open circuits, emitting a signal that the entity can detect and amplify. Timeline therapy is a way to close those circuits, to heal the past and reclaim your power. He explained that the human mind doesn't experience time linearly. Memories are stored not in chronological order, but according to emotional intensity. Timeline therapy utilizes this principle to access past traumas, not just as isolated events, but as part of a continuous narrative. Imagine your life as a timeline, Thorne instructed. It stretches from your earliest childhood memories to the present moment. Each event, each experience, is a point on that line, imbued with its own emotional charge. He guided them through a process of hypnotic regression, helping them access specific points on their timelines, moments of significant emotional impact. He emphasized that this wasn't about reliving the trauma, but about revisiting it with a new perspective, a perspective of strength and understanding. The goal, Thorne explained, is to disconnect the emotional charge from the memory, to recognize that the feelings you experienced then are not necessarily the feelings you need to carry with you now. He worked with Alara, helping her access a memory from her childhood, a time when she was ostracized for her synesthesia, labeled as different, weird. He guided her to reframe the experience, to see it not as a source of shame, but as a testament to her unique abilities. What did you need then that you didn't receive? Thorne asked. Acceptance, Alara whispered. Understanding. And can you give yourself that now? Alara paused, then nodded. Yes, she said. I can accept myself. I can understand my own experience. Thorne then helped her create a new narrative for the memory, one where she embraced her synesthesia, where she recognized its power and beauty. He helped her release the pent-up emotions associated with the trauma, the fear, the sadness, the anger. He used similar techniques with the other synesthetes, helping them confront their own past traumas, their own hidden wounds. He emphasized that the process was deeply personal, requiring courage, vulnerability, and a willingness to face the darkness within. The entity, Thorne explained, wants you to remain trapped in the past, bound by your traumas. But you have the power to break free. You have the power to heal. You have the power to rewrite your history. He stressed that timeline therapy wasn't a one-time fix. It was an ongoing process, a continuous journey of self-discovery and emotional healing. It was about recognizing the patterns of trauma, challenging limiting beliefs, and choosing a new path, a path of resilience, strength, and self-acceptance. By healing your past, Thorne said, you weaken the entity's hold on you. You close the open circuits, depriving it of its fuel. And you reclaim your power, not just over your senses, but over your own life story. Chapter 14. The Mirror Touch Madness. Dr. Thomas Ashton was a healer. His mirror touch synesthesia, a rare and often misunderstood condition, allowed him to literally feel the pain of his patients. A broken bone in their arm would manifest as a phantom ache in his own. A burn on their skin would feel like fire on his. It was a gift, a tool that allowed him to empathize deeply, to understand their suffering on a visceral level. But now, in Derry, that gift had become a curse, a conduit for unimaginable torment. As the entity's influence spread, amplifying the town's sensory experiences, Thomas's mirror touch synesthesia became a living nightmare. He wasn't just feeling the physical pain of his patients anymore. He was experiencing the full spectrum of their suffering, the terror, the despair, the raw, unfiltered agony of a town teetering on the edge of madness. Every scream he heard, every whimper, every cry of pain echoed in his own body, amplified 1,000-fold. He felt the crushing weight of grief as families were torn apart by the sensory distortions. He felt the burning sting of fear as people succumbed to the entity's influence. He felt the gnawing emptiness of despair as hope dwindled in the face of the encroaching darkness. His own body became a battleground, a canvas upon which the town's collective suffering was painted in vivid, excruciating detail. Phantom pain shot through his limbs, mimicking the injuries of his patients. Phantom burns scarred his skin, mirroring the burns he had treated in the emergency room. Phantom emotions raged within him, a tempest of fear, grief, and despair that threatened to consume him. He tried to shut it out, to block the sensory onslaught, but it was no use. His mirror-touch synesthesia was a constant connection, a bridge between his own body and the suffering of others. The entity, it seemed, was exploiting this connection, using Thomas as a conduit for its own malevolent influence. He became a prisoner of his own empathy, trapped in a cycle of pain and suffering. Sleep offered no respite. His dreams were filled. The screams of the tormented, the faces of the afflicted, their pain etched onto his soul. He woke each morning feeling more exhausted, more broken, more desperate than the day before. His sanity began to fray. He started to see hallucinations, phantom figures writhing in agony, their screams echoing in his mind even when the town was quiet. He began to lose track of time, the days and nights blurring into a continuous stream of pain and suffering. He tried to seek help, to explain his condition to his colleagues, but they dismissed him as stressed, overworked, on the verge of a breakdown. They couldn't understand the reality of his experience, the visceral connection he had to the town's suffering. Thomas was alone, trapped in his own personal hell, a victim of his own gift, a casualty of the entity's war on the senses. He was a mirror, reflecting the madness of Derry, his own sanity cracking under the weight of the town's pain, driven to the brink by the mirror-touch madness. He was a living testament to the entity's power to corrupt, to distort, to break even the most compassionate of souls. Chapter 15. The cacophony begins. The breaking point arrived not with a bang, but a slow, creeping crescendo. The sensory distortions, which had previously manifested in isolated incidents, began to coalesce, intertwining and amplifying each other into a symphony of terror. Derry, once a town humming with the rhythm of everyday life, descended into a cacophony of madness. Taste of terror, which had plagued the picnic and other isolated incidents, became a constant companion. Food, once a source of nourishment and pleasure, became a trigger for nausea and revulsion. Every meal was a gamble, a potential trigger for phantom screams and the metallic tang of fear. Restaurants closed, grocery stores emptied, as the town's residents struggled to stomach even the simplest fare. The sound of pain, which had echoed in Thomas's tormented mind, now reverberated through the streets. The once comforting sounds of everyday life, children laughing, birds singing, cars humming, were replaced by a chorus of distorted cries, agonized moans, and the chilling whispers of the entity. Music, once a source of joy and celebration, became a weapon, its melodies twisting into discordant shrieks, its harmonies dissolving into a cacophony of pain. The sight of fear, which had haunted Alara's dreams, now painted the town in hues of terror. The vibrant colors of Derry, which had once been a source of beauty and wonder, morphed into a swirling vortex of sickness and despair. The sky, once a canvas of blue and white, became a bruised and ominous purple, streaked with the sickly green of decay. The faces of the townspeople, once familiar and friendly, became contorted with fear, their eyes wide with terror, their skin tinged with the violet hue of bruising. The tactile world, which had become a source of torment for Sarah, now assaulted everyone in Derry. The gentle breeze turned into a biting wind, carrying with it the phantom touch of icy needles. The warmth of the sun became an oppressive weight, a burning sensation that seemed to penetrate the very bones. Every touch, every interaction, became a potential trigger for pain and revulsion. The olfactory landscape, once a subtle background hum, became a suffocating cloud of fear and decay. The sweet scent of flowers turned acrid. The aroma of freshly cut grass became the stench of rotting flesh. The entity's presence, once a faint metallic tang, became an overwhelming stench, a cloying mix of ozone and decay that permeated every corner of Derry. The sensory overload became unbearable. People wandered the streets in a daze, their senses overwhelmed, their minds fractured. They screamed, they wept, they lashed out in fear and frustration. The town descended into chaos, a symphony of terror conducted by the entity itself. Alara and Gabriel, along with the other synesthetes, struggled to maintain their grip on reality. Their anchors, their reframing techniques, their mastery of submodalities, all seemed inadequate in the face of this sensory tsunami. The entity had unleashed its full power, turning Derry into a living nightmare, a testament to its ability to corrupt, distort, and destroy. The cacophony had begun, and the town was drowning in a sea of sensory madness. Part 3. The Crescendo. Chapter 16. Pattern Interrupt. Derry was a maelstrom. The cacophony of distorted senses had reached a fever pitch, threatening to shatter the town's collective sanity. Ilara, Gabriel, and the remaining synesthetes knew they had to act, and quickly. The entity was weaving a complex web of sensory manipulation, a pattern of fear and pain that was ensnaring the town. They needed to disrupt that pattern, to break the entity's hold on their perceptions. Back in Dr. Thorne's office, the air crackled, with tension. The sensory overload from outside seeped into the room, making it difficult to concentrate. Thorne, however, remained calm, his focus laser-sharp. "The entity," he said, his voice firm, "is exploiting predictable patterns. It's using your expectations, your ingrained responses to sensory stimuli, to amplify your fear. To break free, you must disrupt those patterns. You must learn to interrupt." He explained that the entity's control was based on repetition, on the predictable sequence of sensory input and emotional response. "Think of it like a broken record," Thorne said. "The needle is stuck in a groove, playing the same distorted melody over and over again. To fix the record, you need to lift the needle. To disrupt the pattern, he introduced the concept of pattern interrupt, a technique designed to break the cycle of sensory manipulation and emotional reactivity. The key, Thorne explained, is to introduce something unexpected, something that breaks the flow of sensory input, something that startles the mind out of its habitual patterns. He demonstrated several pattern interrupt techniques. One simple method, he said, is to introduce a sudden, unexpected stimulus. A loud noise, a bright flash of light, a sudden change in temperature. This can jolt the mind out of its trance, breaking the entity's hold. He then showed them how to use incongruity to disrupt patterns. "The entity relies on consistency," Thorne explained. "It expects you to react in a certain way to certain sensory inputs. By introducing something incongruous, something that doesn't fit the pattern, you can throw the entity off balance." He gave an example. If the entity is using the taste of food to evoke fear, try pairing that taste with something completely unexpected. A sweet taste with a sour smell, a rough texture with a smooth sound. The incongruity will disrupt the established pattern, weakening the entity's control. Thorne also emphasized the importance of internal pattern interrupts. "The entity is not just manipulating external senses," he said. "It's also manipulating your internal dialogue, your thoughts, your emotions. You need to interrupt those internal patterns as well." He taught them techniques for thought stopping, a way to break the cycle of negative thoughts and self-defeating beliefs. "When you find yourself spiraling into fear," Thorne instructed, "use a trigger word, a mental image, or a physical action to interrupt the thought pattern. Replace the negative thought with a positive affirmation, a reminder of your strength and resilience." He stressed that pattern interrupt was not a magic bullet. It required practice, vigilance, and a willingness to step outside of their comfort zones. "The entity will resist," Thorne warned. "It will try to reassert its control, to pull you back into the familiar patterns of fear and pain. But with persistence, with conscious effort, you can break free. You can interrupt the symphony of terror." He looked at them intently. "The entity's power lies in its predictability. By becoming unpredictable, by learning to interrupt its control, you can reclaim your senses, reclaim your minds, reclaim your town." The fight, he made clear, was far from over, but they now had a powerful tool, a way to disrupt the entity's symphony, to introduce a note of defiance into the cacophony of fear. Chapter 17. The Lexical Gustatory Feast of Fear. Arthur Finch, Derry's esteemed and often feared food critic, possessed a rare and peculiar form of synesthesia, lexical gustatory. For Arthur, words weren't just symbols, they were flavors. Succulent tasted of ripe peaches, bitter of dark chocolate, tangy of lime zest. His reviews were legendary, not just for their eloquence, but for the way they evoked the very essence of a dish, painting a vivid picture on the reader's palate. But now, Arthur's gift had become a torment. The entity, in its insidious manipulation of Derry's senses, had twisted his lexical gustatory synesthesia into a source of unimaginable horror. Words, once a delight to savor, now evoked tastes of blood, decay, and pure terror. His daily routine, once a source of pleasure and professional pride, had become a gauntlet of sensory assaults. Reading the morning newspaper was like chewing on rusty nails, the ink staining his tongue with a metallic tang of fear. Listening to the radio was like swallowing bile, the news reports leaving a lingering aftertaste of despair. Even casual conversations were a minefield, each word a potential trigger for nausea and revulsion. Mealtimes, once a celebration of flavor, were now a grotesque parody. The word breakfast tasted of burnt hair, the word lunch of rotting meat, the word dinner of ash and despair. He tried to avoid eating altogether, but the gnawing hunger only amplified the phantom tastes, making them even more vivid, more repulsive. He found himself trapped in a cycle of sensory aversion. He recoiled from conversations, avoided reading, and subsisted on bland, tasteless liquids, anything to minimize the onslaught of horrifying flavors. But the entity was relentless. It infiltrated his thoughts, whispering words into his mind, each syllable triggering a fresh wave of nausea. He tried to use the anchoring techniques Dr. Thorne had taught them, associating positive words with pleasant tastes. But the anchors were weak, overwhelmed by the sheer intensity of the entity's influence. The word joy, once a burst of sweet citrus, now tasted of bile and vomit. The word hope, once a delicate floral note, now left a lingering aftertaste of decay. His world had shrunk to a prison of linguistic torment. He became a recluse, afraid to speak, afraid to read, afraid even to think. The entity had weaponized his gift, turning the joy of language into a source of constant, agonizing dread. Every word, every thought, every sensory input was filtered through the lens of fear, leaving him trapped in a perpetual lexical gustatory feast of terror. He was a living testament to the entity's power to corrupt, to twist even the most refined of senses into instruments of torture. And as he choked down the phantom taste of despair, he knew that if he didn't find a way to break free, he would be consumed by the entity's linguistic nightmare, his palate forever stained with the taste of fear. Chapter 18. Trance Induction for Healing. The escalating sensory assaults and the psychological torment they inflicted made it clear. They needed more than just coping mechanisms. They needed deep, lasting healing. Dr. Thorne, recognizing the profound impact of the entity's influence on their minds, introduced the concept of trance induction. The entity, he explained, isn't just attacking your senses, it's attacking your subconscious. It's planting seeds of fear, doubt, and helplessness. To truly heal, you need to access your inner resources, the untapped potential that lies within your subconscious mind. He explained that trance, a state of focused attention and heightened suggestibility, could be a powerful tool for accessing these inner resources. Trance, Thorne clarified, isn't about losing control. It's about gaining access to a deeper level of awareness, a place where you can reprogram your mind, heal emotional wounds, and strengthen your resilience. He guided them through a gentle induction process, using soothing words, rhythmic breathing, exercises, and visualization techniques to create a state of deep relaxation. He emphasized that everyone experiences trance differently. Some might see vivid images, others might feel a sense of floating, while others might simply experience a profound sense of calm. The key, Thorne said, is to let go of the conscious mind, to allow your subconscious to take center stage. There is no right or wrong way to experience trance. Just trust the process and allow yourself to relax. Once they were in a state of light trance, Thorne began to guide them through a process of inner healing. He used metaphorical language, imagery, and positive affirmations to address the emotional wounds inflicted by the entity. Imagine, he said, his voice soft and soothing, that you are standing in a beautiful garden. The sun is warm on your skin. The air is filled with the scent of flowers. This is your inner sanctuary, a place of peace and healing. He then guided them to visualize the entity's influence as a dark cloud, a swirling vortex of fear and negativity. See this cloud, Thorn instructed. Recognize it for what it is, a manifestation of fear, not a reflection of your true self. He then helped them use their inner resources to dispel the dark cloud, replacing it with light, love, and healing energy. Imagine, he said, that you are surrounded by a shield of light, a protective barrier that repels all negativity. Feel the warmth of this light. Feel its healing power. Thorn also used trance to help them access forgotten memories, repressed emotions, and hidden strengths. He guided them to reframe past traumas, to release pent-up emotions, and to integrate these experiences into a narrative of resilience and growth. Your subconscious mind, Thorn explained, holds the key to your healing. It knows what you need, what you are capable of. By accessing this inner wisdom, you can overcome the entity's influence, heal your emotional wounds, and emerge stronger than ever before. He emphasized that trance induction was not a passive process. It required active participation, a willingness to confront their inner demons, and a commitment to healing. This, Thorn said, is not a magic cure. It's a tool, a powerful tool, that can help you access your inner resources and heal from within. But like any tool, it requires practice and dedication. The more you use it, the stronger you will become. He then brought them out of trance gently, reminding them that the feelings of peace and healing they experienced could be carried with them into their waking lives. He encouraged them to practice self-hypnosis, to continue exploring their inner landscape, to continue healing the wounds inflicted by the entity. The fight was far from over, but they now had a powerful weapon in their arsenal, the ability to heal themselves from within, to tap into the limitless potential of their subconscious minds. Chapter 19. The Number Form Nightmare. 10-year-old Billy had a secret. Numbers weren't just abstract symbols to him. They were vibrant, three-dimensional shapes, each with its own personality and location in his mental space. His number form. Synesthesia made math class a kaleidoscopic adventure, but it also made him different, a fact he tried desperately to hide. Now, in Derry, Billy's secret was about to become a terrifying revelation. As the entity's influence intensified, Billy's number forms began to warp and twist. The familiar friendly shapes of his numerical world morphed into grotesque, menacing figures. The number 7, usually a playful hook, became a jagged claw. The number 8, normally a balanced loop, turned into an infinity symbol that seemed to stretch into an endless void. One afternoon, while trying to escape the sensory chaos outside, Billy retreated to his room, seeking solace in his number forms. He closed his eyes, visualizing the numbers in his mind, trying to restore order to his distorted numerical world. But as he focused, a new pattern emerged, a sequence of numbers he had never seen before. It was a complex, swirling arrangement, a fractal-like structure that pulsed with a faint, violet light, the telltale sign of the entity's presence. The numbers themselves seemed to writhe and twist, forming a code, a language that Billy didn't understand, but instinctively knew was dangerous. He tried to push the pattern away, to force his number forms back into their familiar order. But the entity had infiltrated his numerical world, turning his gift against him. The code grew larger, more intricate, more menacing, its numbers sharp and threatening, their violet light burning into his mind. He realized with growing horror that the code wasn't just a random sequence. It was a key, a numerical representation of the entity's power, its influence over Derry, its ability to distort reality, to manipulate the senses. And he, Billy, with his unique perception of numbers, had stumbled upon it, making himself a target. The entity began to communicate through the code, whispering messages into Billy's mind, using the language of numbers to instill fear and confusion. The messages were fragmented, cryptic, but their meaning was clear. The entity was watching, it was waiting, and it was coming. Billy tried to tell someone about the code, about the messages, But no one believed him. They dismissed his fears as childish fantasies, a product of his overactive imagination. They couldn't see what he saw. They couldn't hear what he heard. He was alone, trapped in his number-form nightmare, a prisoner of the entity's numerical code. He knew he had to break the code, find a way to disrupt the pattern, to silence the entity's whispers. But he was just a child, armed only with his unique perception of numbers, a perception that had become a dangerous trap. The entity had found a way to weaponize his innocence, turning his gift into a source of terror. And as the numbers swirled around him, their violet light intensifying, Billy feared that he had unlocked a door he could never close, a door that led straight into the heart of the entity's darkness. Chapter 20. Sensory Acuity. Billy's terrifying encounter with the numerical code underscored a crucial weakness in their defenses. They were reacting to the entity's manipulations, not anticipating them. They were playing catch-up, constantly, bombarded by distorted sensations, struggling to regain control. Dr. Thorne recognized the need for a more proactive approach. They needed to sharpen their senses, to become more attuned to the subtle cues that betrayed the entity's movements. The entity, Thorne explained, relies on your inattention. It exploits the gaps in your perception, the moments when you're not fully present, not fully aware. To anticipate its moves, you must cultivate sensory acuity. You must learn to see what others miss, to hear what others ignore, to feel what others dismiss. He explained that sensory acuity wasn't just about experiencing sensations. It was about actively engaging with them, paying attention to the nuances, the subtle variations, the almost imperceptible shifts in sensory input. Think of it like a detective, Thorne said. A good detective doesn't just look at the crime scene, they analyze it. They look for clues, for subtle details that others might overlook. The same applies to your senses. You must become detectives of your own perception. He guided them through a series of exercises designed to heighten their sensory awareness. He had them close their eyes and focus on their breathing, paying attention to the subtle rise and fall of their chests, the gentle flow of air through their nostrils. Don't just breathe, Thorne instructed. Feel the texture of the air as it enters your lungs. Is it warm or cool? Is it dry or humid? Notice the subtle variations in temperature, in pressure, in the rhythm of your breath. He then had them focus on their sense of touch, exploring different textures, paying attention to the subtle differences in pressure, in temperature, in the way each object felt against their skin. Don't just touch, Thorne said. Explore the object with your fingertips. Feel the contours, the edges, the subtle variations in texture. Is it rough or smooth? Is it hard or soft? Is it warm or cold? He used similar exercises to sharpen their other senses: sight, hearing, smell, and taste. He encouraged them to pay attention to the subtle shifts in light and shadow, the almost imperceptible changes in sound, the faint nuances in scent, the delicate variations in flavor. The entity, Thorne explained, leaves traces of its presence in the sensory landscape. Subtle distortions, almost imperceptible shifts in perception, these are the clues you need to look for. By sharpening your sensory acuity, you can learn to detect these clues, to anticipate the entity's moves before it strikes. He emphasized that sensory acuity was not just about physical perception, it was also about mental awareness. Your thoughts, your emotions, your internal dialogue, these are also sensory experiences, Thorne said. You must learn to pay attention to these internal cues as well, to recognize the subtle shifts in your mood, the fleeting thoughts that flicker through your mind. He taught them techniques for mindfulness, a way to observe their thoughts and emotions without judgment, to become more aware of their internal landscape. By becoming more mindful of your internal state, Thorne explained, you can detect the early warning signs of fear, anxiety, or despair, allowing you to take steps to manage your emotions before they overwhelm you. He stressed that cultivating sensory acuity was an ongoing process, a continuous practice of paying attention, of engaging with the world around them, both internally and externally. The entity wants you to be distracted, to be unaware, Thorne said. By becoming more aware, more attuned to the subtle cues, you can reclaim your senses, reclaim your minds, reclaim your power. They were learning to become sensory detectives, hunting for clues in the distorted landscape of Derry, preparing to anticipate the entity's next move, to turn the tables on the hunter and become the hunted. Chapter 21. The Personification of Pain. Nurse Eleanor Vance had always possessed a unique and sometimes unsettling form of synesthesia. For her, pain wasn't just a sensation, it was a person. A sharp, stabbing pain manifested as a tall, gaunt figure with icy blue eyes. A dull ache became a hunched, weary old woman. This personification of pain, while sometimes disturbing, had also made her an exceptionally empathetic nurse. She understood her patients' suffering on a visceral level, seeing the physical manifestation of their pain in her mind's eye. But in Derry, the entity had twisted Eleanor's gift into a terrifying curse. The pain she saw was no longer just a representation of physical ailments. It was a manifestation of the town's collective suffering, a grotesque gallery of agony and despair. And the entity, she realized with growing horror, was using these personifications to amplify the town's trauma, to feed on their fear. The sharp stabbing pain of a broken bone now appeared as a tall, gaunt figure, but its icy blue eyes were no longer neutral. They were filled with malice, a cruel delight in the suffering it inflicted. The dull ache of arthritis became a hunched old woman, but her face was no longer weary. It was contorted with rage, her gnarled hands reaching out to inflict more pain. But the most terrifying transformation was in the personification of emotional pain. Grief manifested as a weeping woman, her tears burning acid on Eleanor's skin. Fear became a shadowy figure, its presence a suffocating weight on her chest. Despair took the form of a gaunt, skeletal figure, its touch a chilling reminder of mortality. And then there was the entity's pain. It was unlike anything Eleanor had ever seen. It wasn't a single figure, but a shifting, amorphous mass of agony, a grotesque amalgamation of every form of suffering imaginable. It had no face, no distinct features, but its presence was palpable, a suffocating aura of malevolence. The entity's pain whispered to Eleanor, not in words, but in raw emotion, in pure suffering. It showed her visions of the town's past traumas, the hidden wounds that festered beneath the surface. It amplified the pain of loss, the sting of betrayal, the crushing weight of regret. Eleanor realized with horror that the entity wasn't just manipulating sensory perceptions, it was manipulating the very essence of pain, giving it a voice, a face, a personality. It was personifying suffering, turning it into a tangible entity that could be seen, heard, and felt. She tried to use her medical knowledge to understand the entity's influence, to find a way to counteract its manipulations. But the entity's pain was beyond the realm of physical medicine. It was a psychological assault, a weapon aimed at the very core of human experience. She tried to use the reframing techniques Dr. Thorne had taught them, to reinterpret the personifications of pain, to see them as symbols of strength and resilience. But the entity's influence was too strong. The weeping woman couldn't be reframed as a symbol of compassion. Her tears still burned like acid. The shadowy figure of fear couldn't be transformed into a symbol of courage. Its presence still suffocated her. Eleanor was trapped in a living nightmare, forced to witness the personification of pain, to feel its cruel touch, to hear its whispers of suffering. She was a conduit for the town's collective agony, a mirror reflecting the entity's malevolence. And as she stared into the faceless void of the entity's pain, she knew that if she didn't find a way to break free, she would be consumed by the suffering, driven to madness by the personification of pain. Chapter 22. Negotiating with the Subconscious. Eleanor's harrowing experience with the personified pain highlighted the entity's insidious strategy. It was attacking not just their senses, but their very sense of self, their inner strength, their subconscious resilience. Dr. Thorne recognized the need for a more direct approach, a way to bypass the conscious mind and communicate directly with the subconscious, the wellspring of their untapped potential. The subconscious, Thorne explained, is the storehouse of all your memories, all your experiences, all your beliefs. It's the silent partner in your conscious life, influencing your thoughts, your emotions, your actions. often without your awareness. He explained that the entity was exploiting this subconscious realm, planting seeds of fear, doubt, and helplessness, manipulating their deepest beliefs about themselves and the world. To fight back, Thorne said, you must learn to negotiate with your subconscious, to reclaim your inner power, to rewrite the narrative that the entity has imposed upon you. He introduced the concept of subconscious communication, a way to access this hidden realm through guided imagery, metaphors, and symbolic language. The subconscious, Thorne explained, speaks in symbols. It communicates through dreams, intuitions, and gut feelings. To understand its language, you must learn to listen, to pay attention to the subtle cues, the hidden messages. He guided them through a process of deep relaxation, helping them quiet the chatter of their conscious minds and access the deeper layers of their awareness. He emphasized that this wasn't about controlling the subconscious, but about establishing a dialogue, a negotiation between the conscious and subconscious minds. Imagine, Thorne instructed, that you are meeting your subconscious mind. It might appear as a person, an animal, a symbol, or simply a feeling. Don't try to force it. Just allow it to emerge, to reveal itself to you. He then encouraged them to ask their subconscious mind questions. What do I need to know to overcome this challenge? What strengths do I possess that I haven't yet recognized? What limiting beliefs are holding me back? He emphasized the importance of listening patiently, of paying attention to the images, the feelings, the thoughts that arose in response to their questions. The subconscious, Thorne said, doesn't always communicate in words. It might use metaphors, symbols, or even just a sense of knowing. The key is to trust your intuition, to trust the wisdom of your inner self. He then taught them how to use affirmations and suggestions to reprogram their subconscious minds, to replace negative beliefs with positive ones, to strengthen their resilience, their courage, their self-belief. Imagine, Thorne said, that you are planting seeds in fertile ground. These seeds are your affirmations, your positive suggestions. Nurture them with your attention, your belief, your emotional energy. Watch them grow into powerful truths that will shape your reality. He stressed that communicating with the subconscious was an ongoing process, a continuous dialogue between the conscious and unconscious mind. It's not about finding a quick fix, Thorne explained. It's about building a relationship with your inner self, a relationship based on trust, respect, and understanding. He encouraged them to practice these techniques regularly, to continue exploring their inner landscape, to continue negotiating with their subconscious minds. The entity, Thorne warned, wants you to believe that you are powerless, that you are at its mercy. But you have the power within you to reclaim your inner strength, to unlock your hidden potential, to rewrite the narrative of your life. They were learning to become negotiators of their own destinies, empowered by the wisdom, the resilience, the untapped potential that lay dormant within their subconscious minds. Chapter 23. The Time-Space Distortion. Architect Eleanor Vance, no relation to the nurse, possessed a unique and often disorienting form of synesthesia. Time-space. For Eleanor, time wasn't just a linear progression. It was a physical dimension, a landscape she could navigate in her mind's eye. Years were mountains, months were hills, days were winding paths. This spatial understanding of time gave her an unparalleled ability to visualize architectural plans, to see buildings not just as static structures, but as dynamic entities evolving through time. But in Derry, the entity had weaponized Eleanor's gift, twisting her perception of time and space into a terrifying labyrinth. The familiar landscape of her temporal synesthesia began to distort, its once orderly structure collapsing into a chaotic jumble. Years twisted into Mobius strips, months became Escher-like staircases that led nowhere, and days stretched into agonizing eternities or compressed into fleeting moments. The entity, Eleanor realized with growing dread, was manipulating time and space itself, blurring the lines between reality and nightmare. Buildings in Derry began to shift and change, their architecture defying the laws of physics, their dimensions warping and twisting in impossible ways. Houses appeared where there were none before, streets dead-ended into empty voids, and familiar landmarks vanished without a trace. Eleanor's time-space synesthesia became a window into this distorted reality. She saw moments from the past superimposed on the present, ghostly images of Derry's history flickering like half-forgotten dreams. She saw glimpses of the future, terrifying visions of the town consumed by darkness, its buildings crumbling into dust, its inhabitants lost in a timeless void. She tried to use her architectural skills to make sense of the distortions, to find a pattern in the chaos. But the entity's manipulations were beyond her comprehension. The geometry of Derry had become non-Euclidean, its dimensions warped and twisted in ways that defied human understanding. She found herself trapped in a time-space loop, reliving the same terrifying moments over and over again. She saw her childhood, home once a symbol of safety and comfort, morph into a grotesque parody, its windows staring like empty eyes, its doors leading into endless corridors of fear. She experienced the same conversations, the same encounters, the same moments of terror, each repetition amplifying her dread, eroding her sanity. The entity was using the time-space distortion to disorient, to confuse, to break the town's collective sense of reality. It was trapping them in a nightmare where time had no meaning, where space was no longer a safe haven, where the past, present, and future were all tangled together in a terrifying knot. Eleanor, with her unique perception of time and space, was particularly vulnerable to this manipulation. Her gift had become a prison, trapping her in a labyrinth of distorted memories, terrifying visions, and endless repetitions. She was a living testament to the entity's power to manipulate not just the senses, but the very fabric of reality, to warp time, to twist space, to turn the world into a perpetual nightmare. And as she stumbled through the ever-shifting landscape of Derry, she feared that she and the entire town were lost in the entity's time-space distortion, adrift in a sea of endless terror. Chapter 24. Future Pacing for Resilience. The time-space distortions plaguing Derry and Eleanor's entrapment within them highlighted a critical need. They weren't just fighting a present danger, they were battling the lingering echoes of past traumas and the looming specter of future horrors. Dr. Thorne, recognizing the psychological toll this was taking, introduced the concept of future pacing. The entity, he explained, feeds not just on your current fear, but also on your anticipated fear, the dread of what might happen. It uses your imagination against you, painting terrifying scenarios of future suffering. To break free from this cycle of anticipatory anxiety, you must learn to future pace for resilience. He explained that future pacing was a technique for mentally rehearsing future challenges, preparing for potential obstacles, and building resilience against fear and doubt. It's about creating a mental blueprint for success, Thorne said. A roadmap for navigating future difficulties with confidence and strength. He guided them through a process of visualization, helping them imagine themselves facing future challenges, not as victims, but as empowered individuals. Don't just imagine the worst-case scenario, Thorne cautioned. Imagine yourself overcoming it. See yourself using your skills, your resilience, your inner strength to triumph over adversity. He encouraged them to focus on specific details, what they would see, hear, feel, and think in these future scenarios. The more vivid your visualization, Thorne explained, the more powerful the impact. Engage all your senses, create a rich and detailed mental experience. He then helped them identify potential obstacles they might encounter in the future, both internal and external. What challenges might you face? Thorne asked. What doubts might creep into your mind? What external forces might try to undermine you? He then guided them through developing strategies for overcoming these obstacles. How will you respond to these challenges? Thorne asked. What resources will you draw upon? What actions will you take? He emphasized the importance of focusing on their strengths, their past successes, their inherent resilience. Remind yourself of all the times you've overcome adversity, Thorne said. Recall your past victories, the moments when you faced your fears and emerged stronger. These memories are your anchors, your sources of strength in the face of future challenges. He also encouraged them to create positive affirmations about their future selves. "What kind of person do you want to be in the future?" Thorn asked. "What qualities do you want to embody?" Create affirmations that reflect these aspirations, statements of self-belief, resilience, and courage. "The entity wants you to be afraid of the future," Thorn said. "It wants you to believe that you are destined to suffer, that you are powerless to change your fate. But you have the power to choose a different future. You have the power to create a future of resilience, strength, and hope." He stressed that future pacing was not about denying the possibility of future pain or suffering. It was about preparing themselves mentally and emotionally to face those challenges with courage and resilience. "Life will inevitably throw curveballs your way," Thorn said. "But by future pacing for resilience, you can equip yourself with the tools you need to navigate those challenges, to bounce back from setbacks and to emerge stronger than ever before." He encouraged them to practice future pacing regularly, to continue visualizing themselves overcoming future obstacles, to continue reinforcing their resilience, their strength, their unwavering belief in their ability to triumph over adversity. They were learning to become architects of their own futures, designing a future not of fear and despair, but of hope, resilience, and unwavering strength. Chapter 25. The Ordinal Linguistic Possession. For Elias Thorn, no relation to the professor, words weren't just carriers of meaning. They possessed a distinct order, a sequence that resonated with his very being. His ordinal linguistic personification, a rare form of synesthesia, gave each word a place in a mental cue, a hierarchy of language that flowed through him like a living current. This unique perception made him a master wordsmith, his prose imbued with a rhythmic precision, a subtle cadence that captivated his readers. But in Derry, the entity had perverted Elias's gift, turning the orderly flow of language into a weapon, a conduit for its own malevolent influence. Sequence of words, once a source of inspiration and creativity, became a terrifying torrent, a flood of linguistic nightmares that threatened to drown his sanity. The entity began to infiltrate his mental queue, inserting its own words, its own phrases, its own twisted narratives into the flow of his consciousness. These weren't just random words. They were carefully chosen, designed to trigger his deepest fears, to exploit his vulnerabilities, to erode his sense of self. The word home became a chilling reminder of his childhood trauma, a place of fear and neglect. The word love twisted into a grotesque parody, a symbol of betrayal and loss. The word hope morphed into a cruel joke, a mocking reminder of his helplessness. The entity didn't just insert words, it rearranged them, distorted their sequence, creating linguistic abominations that assaulted his mind. Sentences twisted into nonsensical riddles, paragraphs dissolved into chaotic jumbles, stories morphed into terrifying nightmares. Elias tried to fight back, to regain control of his mental cue, to restore order to the flow of his language. But the entity's influence was too strong. It had hijacked his synesthesia, turning his gift against him. The words, once his tools, had become his tormentors, their sequence a chilling reminder of his vulnerability. He tried to write, to use his craft to exercise the entity's influence, but the words refused to obey him. They flowed from his pen, not as expressions of his own thoughts, but as twisted pronouncements of the entity's will. His stories became grotesque parodies of his former work, filled with violence, despair, and a chilling sense of hopelessness. He tried to use the anchoring techniques Dr. Thorne had taught them, associating positive words with calming images. But the anchors were weak, overwhelmed by the sheer intensity of the entity's linguistic assault. The word peace, once a tranquil image of a serene landscape, became a battlefield, its letters stained with blood. Elias was trapped in a linguistic prison, his mind a battleground for the entity's twisted narratives. He was a puppet, his words no longer his own, his stories no longer expressions of his soul, but conduits for the entity's malevolent influence. He was a living testament to the entity's power to corrupt, to distort, to possess even the most intimate aspects of human expression. And as the torrent of linguistic nightmares raged through his mind, Elias feared that he would be consumed by the entity's ordinal linguistic possession, his voice forever silenced, his stories forever tainted by the touch of darkness. Chapter 26. Metaphorical mastery. Elias's struggle with the ordinal linguistic possession underscored a critical truth. The entity wasn't just manipulating their senses and their thoughts, it was manipulating their stories. The narratives they told themselves, about the world, about their place in it. These were the battlegrounds upon which the entity waged its war. Dr. Thorne, recognizing the power of narrative, introduced the concept of metaphorical mastery. The entity, he explained, is a master storyteller. It weaves narratives of fear, doubt, and helplessness, trapping you in stories of victimhood and despair. To break free, you must become a master storyteller yourself. You must learn to craft your own narratives, to reframe your experiences through the power of metaphor. He explained that metaphors were more than just figures of speech. They were powerful tools for shaping perception, for accessing deeper levels of understanding, for transforming limiting beliefs into empowering truths. A metaphor, Thorne said, is a bridge between the known and the unknown, a way to express complex ideas in a simple, relatable way. It's a way to bypass the logical mind and speak directly to the subconscious. He guided them through a process of identifying the core metaphors that govern their lives, the underlying narratives that shape their thoughts and actions. What are the dominant metaphors in your life? Thorne asked. Are you living a story of struggle, a story of sacrifice, a story of helplessness? He then encouraged them to challenge these dominant metaphors, to question their validity, to explore alternative interpretations. Is your story the only story you can tell? Thorne asked. Are there other ways to frame your experiences? Other metaphors that might be more empowering? He introduced the concept of metaphorical reframing, a way to shift perspective by changing the underlying metaphor. If your life feels like a prison, Thorne said, perhaps it's time to reframe it as a journey. If you feel like a victim, perhaps it's time to embrace the metaphor of the warrior. He helped them craft new metaphors, metaphors that resonated with their deepest values, their aspirations, their inherent strengths. What kind of story do you want to live? Thorne asked. What metaphors best express your true potential, your resilience, your courage? He encouraged them to use these new metaphors to reframe their past experiences, to reinterpret their traumas, to rewrite the narratives that had held them captive. The entity wants you to believe that your story is fixed, that you are defined by your past, Thorne said. But you have the power to rewrite your story. You have the power to choose your own metaphors. He then showed them how to use metaphors to create empowering visions of the future, to imagine themselves overcoming challenges, achieving their goals, living lives of purpose and fulfillment. Your imagination is a powerful tool, Thorne said. Use it to create a compelling vision of your future self, a future where you are strong, resilient, and free. He stressed that metaphorical mastery was not just about intellectual understanding. It was about embodying the new metaphors, living them, breathing them, integrating them into their very being. Metaphors are not just words, Thorne said. They are tools for transformation. They are seeds of change that you plant in the fertile ground of your subconscious mind. He encouraged them to practice metaphorical reframing regularly, to continue exploring new metaphors, to continue rewriting their stories. The entity wants you to remain trapped in its narratives of fear and despair, Thorne warned. But you have the power to choose your own stories. You have the power to become masters of your own metaphors, architects of your own destinies. They were learning to become storytellers of their lives, empowered by the transformative power of metaphor, crafting narratives of resilience, strength, and unwavering hope. Chapter 27. The Emotion Color Explosion. Isabelle Dubois, a renowned painter, saw emotions as colors. Joy was a vibrant yellow, sadness a deep blue, anger a fiery red. Her art was a visceral expression of these emotional hues, a swirling symphony of color that captured the nuances of human experience. But in Derry, the entity had weaponized Isabelle's gift, turning her emotional palette into a terrifying instrument of despair. As the sensory distortions intensified, Isabelle's emotion color synesthesia spiraled out of control. The subtle hues of emotion that once graced her canvas exploded into a chaotic storm of color, painting the town in a terrifying tableau of fear and despair. Joy, once a radiant yellow, became a sickly jaundiced green, the color of envy and decay. Sadness, once a tranquil blue, morphed into a murky, suffocating gray, the color of depression and hopelessness. Anger, once a passionate red, twisted into a violent crimson, the color of blood and rage. These weren't just abstract colors. They were palpable emotions, radiating outwards, infecting the very air with their oppressive presence. The joyless green clung to the townspeople, draining their energy, turning their smiles into grimaces. The suffocating gray enveloped them, weighing them down with despair, extinguishing their hope. The violent crimson pulsed through the streets, fueling anger, inciting violence, turning neighbor against neighbor. Isabel, overwhelmed by this emotional kaleidoscope, tried to control the colors, to restore balance to her palette. But the entity had hijacked her synesthesia, turning her gift against her. The colors refused to obey her, swirling and merging into grotesque combinations, painting the town in hues of pure terror. Fear manifested as a pulsating violet, a color that tasted of ash and smelled of decay. Despair took the form of a viscous black, a color that seemed to absorb all light, all hope, all joy. The entity's presence was a shifting, amorphous mass of these terrifying hues, a visual representation of pure evil. Isabel's studio, once a sanctuary of creativity and expression, became a prison of emotional torment. Her canvases, once filled with vibrant life, were now covered in these grotesque hues, reflecting the town's descent into madness. Her paints, once her tools, became weapons, each stroke amplifying the emotional chaos, painting the town in ever darker shades of despair. She tried to use the reframing techniques Dr. Thorne had taught them, to reinterpret the colors, to see them as symbols of resilience and hope. But the entity's influence was too strong. The sickly green couldn't be reframed as a symbol of growth. It still tasted of envy and decay. The suffocating gray couldn't be transformed into a symbol of peace. It still weighed her down with despair. Isabel was trapped in a living canvas, her emotions no longer her own, her art no longer an expression of her soul, but a reflection of the entity's malevolent influence. She was a conduit for the town's collective despair, a painter of nightmares, her brushstrokes fueled by the entity's cruel hand. And as the colors swirled around her, their intensity growing stronger with each passing moment, Isabel feared that she and the entire town were being painted into a corner, a canvas of terror from which there was no escape. Chapter 28. Visual Auditory Synesthesia. Daniel Danny Walker, a gifted musician, lived in a world where sight and sound were inextricably intertwined. His visual auditory synesthesia translated colors into sounds, shapes into melodies, and visual patterns into intricate symphonies. A crimson sunset was a soaring crescendo of violins, a deep blue ocean, a calming rhythm of cellos, a jagged mountain range, a discordant clash of percussion. His music was a visual tapestry, a mesmerizing blend of sound and sight that transported listeners to other realms. But in Derry, the entity had corrupted Danny's gift, turning his visual symphony into a cacophony of terror. The once harmonious colors now translated into jarring dissonances. The soothing melodies replaced by screeching feedback, the harmonious rhythms by a chaotic barrage of noise. Yet amidst this auditory nightmare, Danny discovered a potential weapon. While experimenting with new compositions, trying to find a sonic signature that could counteract the entity's influence, he stumbled upon a peculiar phenomenon. A specific combination of visual patterns, when translated into sound through his synesthesia, reacted strangely to the entity's presence. Instead of being distorted, it seemed to resonate with the entity's own sonic signature, revealing its hidden vulnerabilities. Intrigued, Danny delved deeper, his synesthesia allowing him to see the entity's sound, to visualize its sonic form. The entity, he realized, was not just a manipulator of senses. It was a sonic entity, its presence a discordant symphony of fear and despair. But within this cacophony, Danny perceived subtle patterns. hidden vulnerabilities that could be exploited. He began to experiment, composing a musical piece, a sonic counterpoint to the entity's discordant symphony. He carefully crafted melodies that resonated with the entity's weaknesses, harmonies that disrupted its control, rhythms that countered its chaotic pulse. The music, a complex tapestry of sounds and visual patterns, was more than just a composition. It was a sonic weapon, a visual auditory assault designed to expose the entity's vulnerabilities, to disrupt its control over the town's auditory perception. Danny, with trembling hands, unveiled his creation to the other synesthetes. They listened intently, their senses attuned to the subtle nuances of the music, their synesthesia translating the sounds into a visual symphony of defiance. They decided to use Danny's music as a weapon, a sonic counteroffensive against the entity's auditory control. They organized a concert in the town square, inviting the townspeople to gather, to listen, to experience the power of music to heal and to fight. The concert began, Danny's music filling the air, its melodies resonating with the entity's weaknesses, its harmonies disrupting its control. The entity, sensing its vulnerability, retaliated, intensifying the auditory distortions, trying to drown out Danny's music. But the music was resilient, its sonic frequencies cutting through the cacophony of fear, its visual patterns creating a mesmerizing counterpoint to the entity's chaotic symphony. The townspeople, their senses awakened by the music, began to perceive the entity's distortions, its control over their auditory perception weakening. Danny, with his musical genius and his unique synesthesia, had found a way to fight back, to use his gift as a weapon against the entity. He had created a visual auditory masterpiece, a sonic weapon that could expose the entity's vulnerabilities, that could disrupt its control, that could offer a symphony of hope in the midst of despair. The battle was far from over, but a new weapon had been forged. A sonic weapon that could resonate not just with their ears, but with their souls. A weapon that could turn the tide and lead them towards a future where their auditory world was their own. A symphony of freedom and expression. Chapter 29. The kinesthetic cure, the emotional storm raging through Derry, visualized so vividly by Isabel's distorted art, threatened to paralyze the town with fear. Alara and Gabriel, witnessing the growing despair, recognized the need for a more embodied approach to healing. They needed to move beyond mental reframing and tap into the power of physical movement. Dr. Thorne, understanding the connection between body and mind, introduced the concept of the kinesthetic cure. The entity, he explained, is trying to immobilize you, to trap you in a state of fear and helplessness. It wants you to be passive, reactive, controlled. To break free, you must reclaim your body, your movement, your physical agency. You must find your kinesthetic cure. He explained that movement wasn't just physical, it was emotional, mental, and spiritual. Your body, Thorne said, is a vessel for your emotions, a reflection of your inner state. By changing your physical posture, your movements, your very physicality, you can influence your emotional state, your thoughts, your beliefs. He introduced the concept of kinesthetic anchors, physical movements or postures associated with specific emotional states. Just as you can anchor emotions to sensory stimuli, Thorne explained, you can also anchor them to physical actions, a certain gesture, a specific posture, a rhythmic movement. These can all become triggers for desired emotional states. He guided them through a series of exercises, exploring different movements, paying attention to the way each movement felt in their bodies, the emotions it evoked. Don't just move, Thorne instructed. Feel the movement. Feel the way your muscles contract and relax, the way your weight shifts, the way your body connects with the ground. He encouraged them to experiment with different postures, exploring how each posture affected their emotional state. Stand tall, Thorne said. Feel the strength in your spine, the openness in your chest. How does this posture make you feel? He then had them explore rhythmic movements, swaying, rocking, dancing. Movement is inherently rhythmic, Thorne explained. It's connected to the rhythms of your breath, your heartbeat, the natural cycles of the world. By connecting with these rhythms, you can tap into a deeper source of energy, a wellspring of resilience. He taught them how to create kinesthetic anchors for specific emotional states: courage, confidence, determination. Choose movements that feel powerful, that resonate with the emotion you want to embody, Thorne said. A strong stance, a decisive gesture, a rhythmic movement that makes you feel grounded and centered. He emphasized the importance of practicing these movements regularly, of integrating them into their daily lives. The more you practice, Thorne explained, the stronger the connection between the movement and the emotion will become. These kinesthetic anchors will become your tools for navigating moments of fear, doubt, and despair. He also encouraged them to use movement to release pent-up emotions, to process trauma, to heal from past wounds. Movement is a form of emotional catharsis, Thorne said. It allows you to express emotions that you might not be able to articulate with words. It allows you to release the energy trapped in your body, to move through grief, anger, fear, and pain. The entity, Thorne warned, wants to keep you frozen in fear, trapped in a state of immobility. But you have the power to reclaim your body, your movement, your physical agency. You have the power to dance your way out of despair, to move your way into strength, to find your kinesthetic cure. They were learning to become dancers of their own destinies, empowered by the transformative power of movement, finding resilience, strength, and healing in the rhythm of their bodies, the flow of their movements, a grounded connection to their physical selves. Chapter 30. The Symphony of Despair. Despite their efforts, a chilling sense of despair began to settle over Derry. The entity, its power amplified by the town's collective fear and trauma, had woven a suffocating web of sensory distortions, a symphony of despair that threatened to extinguish all hope. The taste of terror had become a constant companion, poisoning every meal, every drink, every bite. The sound of pain echoed through the streets, a relentless chorus of screams, moans, and chilling whispers. The sight of fear painted the town in hues of despair, the vibrant colors of life replaced by a bleak palette of shadows and decay. The touch of dread clung to their skin, a constant reminder of their vulnerability. The smell of despair permeated the air, a suffocating stench of decay and hopelessness. The entity's presence was everywhere, its influence seeping into every corner of their lives, their minds, their very souls. It whispered doubts, amplified fears, and magnified insecurities. It turned friends against each other, families against themselves, the community against its own heart. The synesthetes, despite their unique abilities, struggled to maintain their footing in this maelstrom of despair. Their anchors, their reframing, techniques, their kinesthetic movements, all seemed inadequate in the face of the entity's overwhelming power. Alara's colors swirled into a vortex of despair, the vibrant hues of her world fading into a bleak monochrome. Gabriel's shapes twisted into menacing forms, their sharp edges threatening to pierce his sanity. Elias's words became weapons, their sequence a chilling reminder of his vulnerability. Eleanor's pain personified into a monstrous entity, its presence a constant torment. Thomas's mirror-touch synesthesia amplified the town's suffering, driving him to the brink of madness. Isabel's emotions exploded into a chaotic storm of color, painting the town in hues of terror and despair. Even Dr. Thorne, the seemingly unflappable expert, seemed to waver. His usual calm demeanor was replaced by a grim determination, his eyes reflecting the town's growing despair. The entity, he knew, was playing a dangerous game, pushing them to the edge, testing their limits, waiting for them to break. The town itself seemed to mirror their despair. The streets were deserted, the houses boarded up, the shops closed. The once vibrant community had become a ghost town, its inhabitants hiding in their homes, afraid to venture out, afraid to face the sensory horrors that awaited them. Hope, once a flickering candle in the darkness, threatened to be extinguished altogether. The entity's symphony of despair had reached its crescendo, its discordant notes filling every corner of Derry, its chilling melodies seeping into their hearts, their minds, their very souls. The town was on the verge of collapse, its inhabitants teetering on the brink of madness, their senses overwhelmed, their spirits broken. The entity's victory seemed inevitable, its reign of terror imminent. The symphony of despair was about to reach its final devastating chord. Part 4. The Resolution. Chapter 31. Sensory Calibration. As Derry teetered on the precipice of utter despair, Dr. Thorne knew a drastic shift was needed. They had been on the defensive, reacting to the entity's attacks, trying to mitigate the damage. It was time to turn the tide, to go on the offensive. He gathered the remaining synesthetes, their faces etched with exhaustion and fear, yet a spark of defiance still flickering in their eyes. "We have been trying to dampen your synesthesia," Thorne began, his voice surprisingly steady amidst the chaos, "to dull its edges, to protect you from the entity's manipulations. But your synesthesia is not the enemy. It is your power. It is time to embrace it, to refine it, to weaponize it." He introduced the concept of sensory calibration, a process of fine-tuning their synesthetic abilities, of learning to control the intensity, the focus, the very nature of their sensory experiences. "You have been reacting to the entity's distortions," Thorne explained, allowing it to dictate the terms of engagement. "Now you will learn to dictate your own terms. You will learn to calibrate your senses, to use them as weapons against the entity." He began by guiding them through a series of exercises designed to heighten their awareness of their synesthetic triggers. "Identify the specific stimuli that evoke your synesthesia," Thorne instructed. "Is it a particular sound, a certain color, a specific texture? Pay close attention to the nuances, the subtle variations that trigger your unique perceptions." He then helped them explore the range of their synesthetic experiences. "How intense are your synesthetic perceptions?" Thorne asked. "Can you control the intensity? Can you amplify it? Can you diminish it?" He encouraged them to experiment, to push the boundaries of their abilities, to discover the full extent of their sensory control. "Your synesthesia is not a fixed entity," Thorne explained. "It is a fluid, dynamic process that you can learn, to shape, mold, to direct." He then taught them how to focus their synesthetic perceptions, to hone in on specific sensory details, to filter out distractions. "The entity bombards you with sensory overload," Thorne said, "trying to overwhelm your senses, cloud your judgment. You must learn to cut through the noise, to focus on the signals that matter." He introduced techniques for sensory isolation, a way to temporarily block out certain senses, to heighten their awareness of others. "By isolating specific senses," Thorne explained, "you can amplify your synesthetic perceptions, making them more vivid, more intense, more focused." He then guided them through a process of sensory amplification, teaching them how to increase the intensity of their synesthetic experiences to make them more powerful, more overwhelming. "The entity uses your senses against you," Thorne said. "Now you will turn the tables. You will use your amplified senses to disrupt its control, to overload its systems, to break its hold on Derry." He stressed that sensory calibration was not just about individual control, it was about collective synergy. "Your synesthesia is interconnected," Thorne explained. "By working together, by coordinating your sensory experiences, you can create a force multiplier, a collective power that can challenge the entity's dominance." He encouraged them to experiment with combining their synesthetic abilities, to explore the possibilities of sensory fusion, to create a symphony of perception that could overwhelm the entity's discordant noise. "You are not just individuals," Thorne said. "You are a collective, a symphony of senses. Together, you have the power to rewrite the score, to create a new harmony, a symphony of hope that can drown out the entity's despair." They were learning to become conductors of their own sensory orchestras, empowered by the refined precision of their synesthetic abilities, ready to turn their perceptions into weapons, their senses into shields, their collective symphony into a force that could challenge the very foundations of the entity's reign of terror. Fight was far from over, but a new sense of hope, a spark of defiance ignited within them. They were no longer just victims. They were warriors, armed with the power of their senses, ready to reclaim their town, their minds, their very souls. Chapter 32. The Smell of Salvation. Madame Evangeline, Derry's enigmatic perfumer, lived in a world of scent. Her synesthesia intertwined smells with emotions, memories, and even glimpses of the future. The sharp tang of citrus signaled impending danger. The sweet aroma of lavender hinted at hidden truths, and the earthy scent of moss spoke of ancient secrets. Her perfumes were legendary, not just for their exquisite fragrances, but for their uncanny ability to evoke specific emotions, to unlock forgotten memories, to even offer glimpses of the future. But in Derry, the entity had corrupted Evangeline's gift, twisting her olfactory world into a source of dread. The once comforting sense of her perfume shop had become a suffocating miasma of fear and despair. The sweet aroma of roses now reeked of decay. The refreshing scent of mint tasted of blood, and the warm fragrance of vanilla carried the chilling whisper of death. Yet amidst this olfactory nightmare, Evangeline discovered a glimmer of hope. While experimenting with new blends, trying to find a scent that could counteract the entity's influence, she stumbled upon a peculiar anomaly. A rare, almost forgotten essence, extracted from a flower that bloomed only under the moonlight, reacted strangely to the entity's presence. Instead of being corrupted, it amplified, its fragrance growing stronger, its scent piercing through the miasma of fear. Intrigued, Evangeline analyzed the essence, her synesthesia revealing its hidden properties. The scent, she realized, resonated with a frequency that disrupted the entity's energy, its vibrations creating a dissonance that weakened its hold on the senses. It was a scent of purity, of clarity, of resilience, a scent of salvation. She began to experiment, blending the essence with other fragrances, amplifying its disruptive properties. She created a perfume, a potent elixir that smelled of moonlight, of fresh rain, of the earth after a storm. It was a scent that evoked hope, that instilled courage, that whispered of a world beyond the entity's grasp. Evangeline, her hands trembling with excitement, tested the perfume on herself. The moment she inhaled its fragrance, the distorted sense of Derry began to fade, replaced by a wave of clarity, a sense of renewed strength. The entity's whispers, which had been plaguing her mind, retreated, their voices replaced by a calming silence. She knew she had found a weapon, a sensory tool that could disrupt the entity's control, that could offer a lifeline to the town. She shared her discovery with the other synesthetes, their faces lighting up with hope. They began to distribute the perfume, offering it to the townspeople, encouraging them to inhale its fragrance, to let its scent wash over them, to break free from the entity's olfactory grip. The effect was immediate. The distorted smells began to dissipate. The taste of terror faded. The oppressive atmosphere of despair lifted. The entity, sensing its power waning, retaliated. It intensified the sensory distortions, trying to drown out the scent of salvation. But the perfume was resilient, its fragrance piercing through the chaos, offering a beacon of hope in the darkness. Evangeline, with her unique gift, had found a way to fight back, to use her synesthesia as a weapon against the entity. She had discovered the smell of salvation, a scent that could disrupt the entity's control, that could restore balance to the sensory world, that could offer a glimmer of hope in the midst of despair. The battle was far from over, but a new weapon had been forged, a sensory tool that could turn the tide, that could lead them towards a future free from the entity's grasp. Chapter 33. The Power of Belief. Evangeline's discovery of the scent of salvation was a turning point, a tangible sign that the entity could be challenged. But Dr. Thorne knew that scent alone wouldn't be enough. They needed something more, something deeper, something that resonated with the very core of their being. He gathered the synesthetes, their faces etched with a mixture of hope and trepidation, and spoke of the power of belief. The entity, Thorne began, his voice resonating with conviction, feeds on your doubts, your fears, your limiting beliefs. It thrives on your disbelief in your own power, your own potential. To truly defeat it, you must cultivate the power of belief. You must believe in yourselves, in your abilities, in the possibility of a future free from its grasp. He explained that belief wasn't just a passive acceptance of something. It was an active force, a creative energy that shaped their reality. Your beliefs, Thorne said, are not just thoughts. They are self-fulfilling prophecies. They shape your perceptions, your actions, your very experiences. If you believe you are powerless, you will become powerless. But if you believe you are strong, you will find strength. He guided them through a process of identifying their limiting beliefs, the negative narratives that held them captive, the doubts that whispered in their minds. "What do you believe about yourselves?" Thorne asked. "What do you believe about the world? What do you believe about the entity?" He encouraged them to challenge these beliefs, to question their validity, to explore alternative perspectives. "Are your beliefs based on facts or on fear?" Thorne asked. "Are they serving you or holding you back? Are they empowering you or limiting you?" He then helped them replace their limiting beliefs with empowering ones, beliefs that resonated with their deepest values, their aspirations, their inherent strengths. "What do you want to believe about yourselves?" Thorne asked. "What do you want to believe about the world? What do you want to believe about your ability to overcome this challenge?" He taught them how to use affirmations, positive statements, that reinforce their new beliefs, to reprogram their minds, to create a new reality based on hope, resilience, and unwavering self-belief. "Repeat these affirmations daily," Thorne instructed. "Write them down, visualize them, feel them in your heart. Let them become your new truths, your guiding principles, your anchors in the storm." He also emphasized the importance of surrounding themselves with positive influences, people, places, and things that reinforce their new beliefs. "Your environment shapes your beliefs," Thorne explained. "Seek out those who believe in you, who support your growth, who inspire you to be your best self. Create a space that nurtures your spirit, that reflects your aspirations, that reminds you of your power." He stressed that cultivating the power of belief was an ongoing process, a continuous practice of challenging limiting beliefs, reinforcing empowering ones, and creating a reality that reflected their deepest truths. "The entity wants you to believe that you are its victim," Thorne said. "But you are not. You are creators of your own reality. You have the power to choose your beliefs, to shape your experiences, to manifest your own destiny." They were learning to become alchemists of their own minds, transforming fear into faith, doubt into determination, and despair into hope. They were harnessing the power of belief, the creative energy that could reshape their reality, that could break the entity's hold on their minds, their hearts, their very souls. The battle was far from over, but a new weapon had been forged, a weapon of the spirit, a weapon of unwavering belief in their own power to overcome, to heal, to create a future free from the entity's grasp. Chapter 34. The Temperature of Truth. Dr. Michael Faraday, Derry's meticulous meteorologist, experienced the world through a unique lens, temperature-related synesthesia. For Michael, emotions weren't just feelings, they were temperatures. Joy was a warm summer breeze, sadness a chilling autumn rain, anger a scorching desert wind. His weather forecasts were legendary, not just for their accuracy, but for their uncanny ability to capture the emotional atmosphere, to predict not just the weather, but the mood of the town. But in Derry, the entity had distorted Michael's gift, turning his thermal perceptions into a source of chilling dread. The once comforting warmth of human connection now felt like the icy grip of death. The joyful summer breeze had become a biting winter wind, and the passionate desert wind now carried the chilling breath of oblivion. Yet amidst this thermal distortion, Michael discovered a crucial truth. While analyzing weather patterns, trying to understand the entity's influence on the town's climate, he noticed a peculiar anomaly. The entity's presence, he realized, was always accompanied by a significant drop in temperature, a chilling cold that seemed to defy the laws of thermodynamics. Intrigued, Michael focused his synesthesia on the entity itself, his perception of temperature revealing its true form. The entity, he discovered, wasn't just a manipulator of senses. It was a being of pure cold, a creature of darkness that thrived on the absence of warmth, of light, of life. This realization sent a shiver down Michael's spine. The entity wasn't just feeding on their fear, it was feeding on their very life force, their warmth, their energy. It was a parasite, draining the town of its vitality, leaving behind a chilling emptiness. He shared his discovery with the other synesthetes, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and determination. They knew now that they weren't just fighting a battle for their senses. They were fighting for their survival, for the very soul of Derry. Michael, with his unique gift, became a beacon of truth. His temperature-related synesthesia, revealing the entity's weakness. He taught the others how to focus their perceptions, to feel the entity's chilling presence, to recognize its true form. They began to experiment, using their combined synesthesia to create pockets of warmth, to generate a collective heat that could challenge the entity's cold. Alara focused her colors on warm hues. Gabriel visualized shapes that radiated heat. Elias infused his words with fiery passion. Eleanor channeled the warmth of human connection. Thomas amplified the heat of courage and defiance. And Isabel painted the town in vibrant colors of hope and resilience. The entity, sensing its vulnerability, retaliated. It intensified the cold, trying to extinguish their warmth, to freeze their spirits. But the synesthetes were resilient, their collective heat growing stronger, their defiance burning brighter. Michael, with his meticulous observations and his unique perception of temperature, had revealed the entity's true form, its Achilles heel. He had shown them that the entity wasn't invincible, that it could be challenged, that it could be defeated. The battle was far from over, but a new understanding had emerged, a knowledge that fueled their hope, that ignited their defiance. They were no longer just victims. They were warriors, armed with the power of their senses, their warmth, their collective belief in the possibility of a brighter future. And as the temperature of truth spread through Derry, a spark of defiance ignited, a flame of hope that threatened to melt the entity's icy grip and reclaim the town from the clutches of darkness. Chapter 35. The Art of Precision. Michael's revelation about the entity's true nature, a being of cold and darkness, sent ripples of fear through the group, but it also ignited a spark of defiance. Dr. Thorne, sensing this shift, knew it was time to refine their weapons further. He gathered the synesthetes, their faces a mixture of apprehension and determination, and spoke of the art of precision. The entity, Thorne began, his voice sharp and focused, is a master manipulator. It uses vague language, ambiguous suggestions, and distorted imagery to influence your perceptions, to sow seeds of doubt and fear. To counter its influence, you must become masters of precision. You must learn to use language with intention, with clarity, with unwavering accuracy. He explained that language wasn't just a tool for communication, it was a tool for shaping reality. Words, Thorne said, are not just symbols, they are spells. They have the power to create, to destroy, to transform. By choosing your words carefully, by using them with precision, you can influence your perceptions, your emotions, your very experiences. He guided them through a process of linguistic deconstruction, analyzing the entity's language, identifying its patterns of manipulation, its subtle distortions, its insidious suggestions. Pay attention to the entity's choice of words, Thorne instructed. What connotations do they evoke? What emotions do they trigger? What beliefs do they reinforce? He then taught them how to use precise language to counter the entity's influence, to reframe negative thoughts, to challenge limiting beliefs, to create empowering narratives. Use words that evoke strength, resilience, and hope, Thorne said. Replace vague terms with specific ones, ambiguous suggestions with clear directives, distorted imagery with vivid and accurate descriptions. He emphasized the importance of using sensory-rich language, words that engaged all their senses, that painted vivid pictures in their minds, that evoked powerful emotions. The entity thrives on abstraction, Thorne explained. It wants to keep you trapped in a world of vague fears and shadowy doubts. By using concrete language, by grounding your experiences in sensory details, you can reclaim your perceptions. You can anchor yourself in reality. He also stressed the importance of using affirmative language, words that affirmed their strengths, their abilities, their inherent worth. The entity uses negative language to undermine your confidence, to erode your self-belief, Thorne said. Counter its negativity with affirmations of your own power, your own potential, your own unwavering determination. He taught them how to use language to create a shield of protection, to deflect the entity's attacks, to maintain their clarity and focus in the midst of chaos. Use words as weapons, Thorne said. Use them to challenge the entity's lies, to expose its manipulations, to disrupt its control. He encouraged them to practice using precise language in their daily lives, in their conversations, in their thoughts, in their very interactions with the world. The entity wants you to be careless with your words, Thorne warned. It wants you to use language that reinforces its narratives of fear and despair. But you have the power to choose your words, to shape your reality, to create a world of hope, resilience, and unwavering strength. They were learning to become wordsmiths of their own destinies, wielding the power of language with precision, with intention, with unwavering focus. They were crafting spells of protection, affirmations of strength, and narratives of hope. The battle was far from over, but a new weapon had been forged. A weapon of language, a weapon of precision, a weapon that could cut through the entity's distortions, that could reclaim their minds, their hearts, their very souls. Chapter 36. The Proprioceptive Puzzle. Maya, a gifted dancer, possessed a rare form of synesthesia that intertwined her sense of proprioception, the awareness of her body in space, with her emotions. Joy was a feeling of lightness, of effortless movement, of boundless expansion. Sadness was a heaviness, a sinking feeling, a constriction in her chest. Fear was a disorientation, a sense of imbalance, a loss of control. Her dancing was a mesmerizing expression of these proprioceptive emotions, a fluid symphony of movement that captivated audiences and conveyed a depth of feeling beyond words. But, in Derry, the entity had distorted Maya's gift, turning her proprioceptive world into a terrifying maze. The once familiar sensations of her body had become alien, unpredictable, and disorienting. Joy, once a feeling of lightness, now felt like a dizzying freefall. Sadness, once a grounding heaviness, now felt like being trapped in quicksand. Fear, once a fleeting disorientation, now felt like a constant state of vertigo. The entity's manipulations extended beyond Maya's own body. The physical space around her seemed to warp and twist, the familiar streets of Derry becoming a labyrinth of shifting dimensions and impossible angles. Buildings leaned at precarious angles, doorways appeared and disappeared at random, and the ground beneath her feet felt unstable, as if the very earth were tilting and swaying. Yet, amidst this proprioceptive chaos, Maya discovered a hidden advantage. Her synesthesia, while distorted, also gave her a unique sensitivity to the entity's manipulations. She could feel the subtle shifts in space, the subtle distortions in gravity, the subtle changes in the flow of energy that betrayed the entity's presence. She began to experiment, using her proprioceptive awareness to navigate the distorted reality. She moved slowly, carefully, feeling her way through the shifting landscape, her body becoming a compass, a divining rod that guided her through the maze. She discovered hidden pathways, subtle openings in the distorted space that allowed her to bypass the entity's traps. She learned to anticipate the shifts in gravity, adjusting her movements to maintain her balance, to avoid being thrown off course. She even began to use the distortions to her advantage, using the shifting dimensions to create shortcuts, to find hidden connections between seemingly disparate locations. Her dancing, once a fluid expression of emotion, became a strategic tool for navigation, a way to find her way through the entity's distorted reality. She moved with a newfound precision, her steps measured, her movements deliberate, her body attuned to the subtle cues of the distorted space. She shared her discovery with the other synesthetes, teaching them how to use their own proprioceptive awareness to navigate the maze. They practiced moving together, their bodies attuned to each other's rhythms, their movements creating a symphony of proprioceptive awareness that challenged the entity's distortions. The entity, sensing its control, slipping, retaliated. It intensified the distortions, trying to disorient them, to throw them off balance. But the synesthetes were resilient, their proprioceptive awareness growing stronger, their movements becoming more fluid, more adaptable. Maya, with her unique gift, had found a way to navigate the entity's distorted reality, to find hidden pathways through the maze. She had shown them that even in the midst of chaos, there was still order, that even in the face of fear, there was still balance. The battle was far from over, but a new path had been revealed. A path of proprioceptive awareness, a path that could lead them through the entity's distortions, towards a future where their bodies, their movements, their very sense of self were no longer subject to the entity's control. Chapter 37. Dissolving limiting beliefs. Maya's ability to navigate the distorted reality with her proprioceptive synesthesia was a powerful reminder that their perceptions weren't just vulnerabilities, they were also strengths. Dr. Thorne, sensing a growing sense of agency within the group, decided to address a more insidious enemy, the limiting beliefs that sabotage their efforts from within. The entity, Thorne explained, his voice calm but firm, doesn't just manipulate your senses, it manipulates your mind. It whispers doubts, amplifies insecurities, and reinforces limiting beliefs that keep you trapped in fear and helplessness. To truly break free, you must dissolve these self-sabotaging beliefs. You must reclaim your mental freedom. He guided them through a process of introspection, helping them identify the limiting beliefs that held them back. What are the stories you tell yourself about yourselves? Thorne asked. What are the negative thoughts that keep repeating in your mind? What are the doubts that whisper in your ear? He encouraged them to be brutally honest with themselves, to dig deep and uncover the hidden beliefs that shape their perceptions, their actions, their very experiences. These beliefs might be deeply ingrained, Thorne cautioned, passed down from generation to generation, reinforced by societal norms, or even implanted by the entity itself. But they are not immutable. They can be challenged, they can be transformed, they can be dissolved. He introduced various techniques for dissolving limiting beliefs. One technique was to question the validity of the belief. Is this belief based on facts or on fear? Thorne asked. Is it serving you or holding you back? Is it empowering you or limiting you? Another technique was to reframe the belief, to find a more empowering interpretation. If you believe you are weak, Thorne said, reframe it as a belief in your potential for growth. If you believe you are unworthy, reframe it as a belief in your inherent value. He also taught them how to use visualization and affirmations to counteract limiting beliefs. Visualize yourself overcoming the limitations imposed by these beliefs, Thorne instructed. See yourself achieving your goals, living your dreams, expressing your full potential. Affirm your strengths, your abilities, your unwavering determination to succeed. He emphasized the importance of replacing limiting beliefs with empowering beliefs that aligned with their deepest values, their aspirations, their inherent strengths. Choose beliefs that support your growth, that inspire you to be your best self, that empower you to create the life you desire, Thorne said. He also stressed the importance of self-compassion, of recognizing that everyone has limiting beliefs, that it's okay to struggle with them, that the process of dissolving them is a journey, not a destination. Be kind to yourselves, Thorne said. Forgive yourselves for past mistakes, for moments of weakness, for the times when you allowed limiting beliefs to hold you back. Embrace your imperfections, your vulnerabilities, your humanness. These are not weaknesses, they are opportunities for growth. The entity wants you to believe that you are defined by your limiting beliefs, Thorne warned. But you are not. You are so much more than your doubts, your fears, your insecurities. You have the power to choose your beliefs, to shape your reality, to create a life of freedom, fulfillment, and unwavering self-belief. They were learning to become liberators of their own minds, dissolving the chains of limiting beliefs, reclaiming their mental freedom, and stepping into their true potential. The battle was far from over, but a new sense of empowerment, a spark of inner strength ignited within them. They were no longer prisoners of their own minds. They were architects of their own beliefs, creators of their own realities, masters of their own destinies. Chapter 38. The Gustatory Gambit. Chef Antoine Dubois, Isabelle's brother, experienced the world through a symphony of flavor. His synesthesia translated sounds into tastes, music into culinary masterpieces. A soaring violin concerto tasted of sweet berries and delicate cream, a deep cello sonata of rich chocolate and earthy truffles. His restaurant was a sensory haven, a place where diners could savor not just the food, but the music that inspired it. But in Derry, the entity had poisoned Antoine's palate, turning his gustatory symphony into a cacophony of fear. The once harmonious melodies now tasted of blood and ash, the delicate harmonies of flavor replaced by a discordant clash of bitterness and decay. Yet, amidst this culinary nightmare, Antoine discovered a potential weapon. While experimenting with new dishes, trying to find a combination of flavors that could counteract the entity's influence, he stumbled upon a peculiar synergy. A rare spice, imported from a remote island, reacted strangely to the entity's presence. Instead of being corrupted, its flavor intensified, its taste cutting through the miasma of fear with a burst of unexpected vibrancy. Intrigued, Antoine analyzed the spice, his synesthesia revealing its hidden properties. The flavor, he realized, resonated with a frequency that disrupted the entity's control over the gustatory senses. It was a flavor of defiance, of resilience, of pure, unadulterated life force, a culinary weapon. He began to experiment, blending the spice with other ingredients, carefully calibrating the flavors to create a dish that would not only taste exquisite, but also disrupt the entity's hold on the town's palates. He crafted a masterpiece, a symphony of textures and flavors that danced on the tongue, each bite a burst of unexpected sensations. The dish, a vibrant tapestry of colors and aromas, was more than just a culinary creation. It was a sensory weapon, a gustatory gambit designed to awaken the town's palates, to break the entity's control over their sense of taste. Antoine, with trembling hands, presented his creation to the other synesthetes. They savored each bite, their faces lighting up with surprise and delight. Flavors so vibrant, so unexpected, so utterly defiant seemed to wash away the lingering taste of fear, replacing it with a renewed sense of hope. They decided to share the dish with the town, offering it as a culinary antidote to the entity's poison. They set up a makeshift kitchen in the town square, the aroma of Antoine's creation wafting through the streets, a beacon of defiance in the midst of despair. The townspeople, drawn by the enticing smell, tentatively approached the makeshift kitchen. They sampled the dish, their eyes widening with surprise, their faces breaking into hesitant smiles. The flavors, so vibrant, so alive, seemed to awaken something within them, a spark of defiance, flicker of hope. The entity, sensing its control, slipping, retaliated. It intensified the gustatory distortions, trying to drown out the flavors of Antoine's creation. But the dish was resilient, its flavors cutting through the miasma of fear, its vibrant symphony of taste awakening the town's palates, reminding them of the joy of food, the pleasure of sensation, the power of defiance. Antoine, with his culinary genius and his unique synesthesia, had found a way to fight back, to use his gift as a weapon against the entity. He had created a gustatory gambit, a culinary masterpiece that could disrupt the entity's control, that could awaken the town's senses, that could offer a taste of hope in the midst of despair. The battle was far from over, but a new weapon had been forged. A culinary weapon that could nourish not just the body, but the soul. A weapon that could turn the tide and lead them towards a future where their senses were their own, their palates free to savor the symphony of flavors that life had to offer. Chapter 39, The Power of Choice. Antoine's culinary triumph resonated through Derry, a defiant act of creation in the face of the entity's destructive power. Dr. Thorne, witnessing the town's reawakening, knew it was time to address a fundamental truth that had been obscured by the entity's manipulations: the power of choice. The entity, Thorne declared, his voice ringing with authority, wants you to believe that you are powerless, that you are victims of circumstance, that your fate is predetermined. It thrives on your learned helplessness, your resignation to its control. But you are not helpless. You are not victims. You have the power of choice. You have the power to shape your reality, to create your own destiny. He explained that choice wasn't just about making decisions. It was about recognizing their agency, their ability to influence their own lives, their own experiences. Every moment, Thorne said, is a choice point. Every thought, every action, every reaction is a choice. You may not be able to control the events that happen to you, but you can always choose how you respond to them. You can choose to react with fear, or you can choose to respond with courage. You can choose to succumb to despair, or you can choose to embrace hope. He guided them through a process of recognizing their choices, of identifying the moments when they felt powerless, the situations where they felt trapped. What are the areas of your life where you feel like you have no choice? Thorne asked. What are the situations where you feel like a victim of circumstance? He encouraged them to challenge these perceptions, to question their assumptions, to explore alternative perspectives. Are you truly powerless? Thorne asked. Are there other options you haven't considered? Are there different ways to respond to the situation? He then helped them identify the choices they had made in the past, both conscious and unconscious, and the impact those choices had had on their lives. Every choice you make, Thorne explained, creates a ripple effect, influencing not just your own life, but the lives of those around you. By becoming more aware of your choices, you can become more conscious creators of your own reality. He taught them how to use their synesthesia to make more informed choices, to tap into their intuition, to access the wisdom of their senses. Your synesthesia, Thorne said, is a gift, a unique perspective that can guide you, that can help you make choices that align with your deepest values, your aspirations, your true self. He also emphasized the importance of taking responsibility for their choices, of recognizing that every choice has consequences, both positive and negative. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, Thorne said. Learn from them, grow from them. Use them as opportunities to refine your decision-making process. But don't let fear of making the wrong choice paralyze you. The only wrong choice is the choice not to choose. The entity wants you to believe that you are powerless, Thorne warned. It wants you to give up your agency, to surrender your freedom. But you are not powerless. You are not victims. You have the power of choice. You have the power to break free from learned helplessness, to reclaim your agency, create a life of purpose, meaning, and fulfillment. They were learning to become masters of their own destinies, empowered by the recognition of their inherent power to choose, to shape their reality, to create a future free from the entity's control. The battle was far from over, but a new sense of agency, a spark of self-determination ignited within them. They were no longer passive recipients of the entity's manipulations. They were active participants in their own lives, conscious creators of their own realities, empowered by the knowledge that they always had a choice. Chapter 40, The Tactile Triumph. Sculptor Jasper Hale lived in a world of textures. His synesthesia translated emotions into tactile sensations. Joy was the smoothness of polished marble, sadness the roughness of unfinished wood, anger the prickly sensation of thorns. His sculptures were a tactile embodiment of these emotional textures, a symphony of form that invited viewers to not just see, but to feel the emotions he sought to convey. But in Derry, the entity had corrupted Jasper's gift, turning his tactile world into a source of revulsion. The once comforting smoothness of marble now felt like the clammy skin of a corpse, the roughness of wood like the grating touch of bone, the prickliness of thorns like the sting of venomous insects. Yet, amidst this tactile nightmare, Jasper discovered a potential weapon. While experimenting with new materials, trying to find a texture that could counteract the entity's influence, he stumbled upon a peculiar stone. A meteorite fragment, cold and dense, pulsed with a strange energy that resonated with his synesthesia. Instead of being corrupted by the entity's touch, it seemed to absorb and amplify the entity's own negative energy, its texture becoming increasingly jarring and repulsive. Intrigued, Jasper analyzed the stone, his synesthesia revealing its hidden properties. The texture, he realized, resonated with a frequency that disrupted the entity's control over tactile sensations. It was a texture of dissonance, of disruption, of pure unyielding resistance, a tactile weapon. He began to work, his hands guided by his synesthesia, shaping the meteorite fragment into a sculpture that would embody the entity's weakness. He carved sharp edges, rough surfaces, and unsettling textures, a physical manifestation of the entity's own disharmony. The sculpture, a grotesque parody of the human form, pulsed with a strange energy, its texture repelling the touch, its presence a constant source of discomfort. It was more than just art. It was a tactile weapon, a physical embodiment of the entity's vulnerability. Jasper, with trembling hands, presented his creation to the other synesthetes. They cautiously approached the sculpture, their faces contorted with revulsion as they felt its disturbing textures. But beneath the revulsion, they sensed a glimmer of hope, a feeling of defiance. They decided to use the sculpture as a focal point for their resistance, a physical anchor for their collective defiance. They placed it in the center of the town square, its unsettling presence a constant reminder of the entity's vulnerability. The townspeople, initially repelled by the sculpture's grotesque form and disturbing textures, gradually began to see it in a new light. It was a symbol of their own resistance, a physical manifestation of their refusal to succumb to the entity's control. The entity, sensing its vulnerability exposed, retaliated. It intensified the tactile distortions, trying to drown out the disruptive textures of the sculpture. But the sculpture was resilient, its presence a constant irritant, its texture a jarring reminder of the entity's weakness. Jasper, with his artistic talent and his unique synesthesia, had found a way to fight back, to use his gift as a weapon against the entity. He had created a tactile triumph, a sculpture that could disrupt the entity's control, that could galvanize the town's resistance, that could offer a physical manifestation of their collective defiance. The battle was far from over, but a new weapon had been forged, a tactile weapon that could awaken their senses, that could strengthen their resolve, that could lead them towards a future where their bodies, their perceptions, their very sense of touch were free from the entity's grasp. Chapter 41. Creating Compelling Futures. Jasper's tactile triumph, a symbol of defiance against the entity's control, ignited a spark of hope in Derry. Dr. Thorne, sensing this shift in the town's collective consciousness, knew it was time to move beyond resistance and focus on creation. He gathered the synesthetes, their faces showing a flicker of renewed determination, and spoke of creating compelling futures. The entity, Thorne began, his voice filled with a quiet strength, wants you to believe that the future is bleak, that your only options are fear and despair. It thrives on your resignation, your lack of vision for a better tomorrow. To truly defeat it, you must create a compelling future. You must envision a world beyond the entity's grasp, a world filled with hope, purpose, and meaning. He explained that the future wasn't just something that happened to them, it was something they created, a tapestry woven from their choices, their actions, their very beliefs. Your future, Thorne said, is not predetermined. It is a blank canvas upon which you can paint your dreams, your aspirations, your vision for a better world. By focusing on what you want to create rather than what you fear, you can shift your energy, you can reclaim your power, you can inspire hope and resilience. He guided them through a process of envisioning their ideal futures, encouraging them to dream big, to imagine a world where the entity's influence was nothing but a distant memory. What does your ideal future look like? Thorne asked. What kind of world do you want to live in? What kind of person do you want to be? He encouraged them to be specific, to engage all their senses, to create a vivid and detailed picture of their desired future. Don't just think about it, Thorne said. Feel it, see it, hear it, taste it, smell it. Make it real in your mind, in your heart, in your very soul. He then helped them identify the steps they needed to take to create their compelling futures, the actions they needed to take, the choices they needed to make, the beliefs they needed to cultivate. What can you do today? Thorne asked, to move closer to your vision. What small steps can you take to create a ripple effect that will lead you towards your desired future? He emphasized the importance of setting goals, of breaking down their vision into manageable steps, of celebrating their progress along the way. The journey towards your compelling future, Thorne explained, is not a sprint. It's a marathon. It requires patience, persistence, and unwavering belief in your ability to create the life you desire. He also stressed the importance of collaboration, of working together to create a shared vision for the future. Your individual futures, Thorne said, are intertwined with the future of your community, your society, your world. By working together, by supporting each other's dreams, you can create a collective force for change, a movement that can transform not just your own lives, but the world around you. The entity wants you to believe that the future is hopeless, Thorne warned, but it's not. You have the power to create a compelling future, a future filled with purpose, meaning, and joy. You have the power to inspire hope, to ignite resilience, to build a better world for yourselves and for generations to come. They were learning to become architects of their own destinies, empowered by the vision of a compelling future, a future where their synesthesia was not a curse, but a gift, a source of strength, creativity, and connection. The battle was far from over, but a new sense of purpose, a spark of hope, ignited within them. They were no longer just survivors. They were visionaries, dreamers, creators of a future where the entity's darkness would be forever banished, replaced by the radiant light of their collective imagination. Chapter 42. The Auditory Assault. Ethan Bell, a talented sound engineer, perceived the world through a unique auditory lens. His synesthesia translated colors into sounds, visual stimuli into complex symphonies. A vibrant red sunset was a crescendo of trumpets, a deep blue ocean, a soothing melody of cellos, a lush green forest, a harmonious chorus of birdsong. His work was renowned for its immersive soundscapes, its ability to transport listeners to other worlds, to evoke emotions that transcended the boundaries of language. But in Derry, the entity had corrupted Ethan's gift, turning his auditory world into a cacophony of terror. The once harmonious colors now translated into jarring dissonances, the soothing melodies replaced by screeching feedback, the harmonious choruses by a discordant symphony of screams. Yet, amidst this auditory nightmare, Ethan discovered a potential weapon. While experimenting with sound frequencies, trying to find a sonic signature that could counteract the entity's influence, he stumbled upon a peculiar phenomenon. A specific frequency, generated by a rare combination of tones and overtones, reacted strangely to the entity's presence. Instead of being distorted, it amplified, its vibrations resonating with an intensity that seemed to shake the very foundations of the town. Intrigued, Ethan analyzed the frequency, his synesthesia revealing its hidden properties. The sound, he realized, disrupted the entity's control over auditory perception. It was a sound of defiance, of disruption, of pure, unyielding sonic force, an auditory weapon. He began to experiment, crafting a sonic weapon, a carefully calibrated sequence of frequencies that would not only disrupt the entity's control, but also resonate with the town's collective consciousness, awakening their auditory senses, reminding them of the beauty and power of sound. The sonic weapon, a complex tapestry of tones and rhythms, was more than just noise. It was a symphony of defiance, an auditory assault designed to break the entity's hold on their perception, to reclaim the soundscape of Derry. Ethan, with trembling hands, unveiled his creation to the other synesthetes. They braced themselves for the onslaught, but instead of pain, they felt a surge of energy, a sense of empowerment. The sound, so powerful, so vibrant, so utterly defiant, seemed to wash away the lingering echoes of fear, replacing them with a renewed sense of hope. They decided to unleash the sonic weapon upon the town, using it to disrupt the entity's auditory control, to awaken the town's senses, to reclaim the soundscape of Derry. They set up a network of speakers throughout the town, the sound of Ethan's creation reverberating through the streets, a beacon of defiance in the midst of despair. The townspeople, initially startled by the unexpected sound, gradually began to attune to its rhythm, its vibrations resonating with their own synesthesia, awakening their senses, reminding them of the beauty and power of sound. The entity, sensing its control slipping, retaliated. It intensified the auditory distortions, trying to drown out Ethan's sonic weapon. But the weapon was resilient, its frequencies cutting through the cacophony of fear, its vibrant symphony of sound, reclaiming the town's auditory landscape. Ethan, with his sonic ingenuity and his unique synesthesia, had found a way to fight back, to use his gift as a weapon against the entity. He had created an auditory assault, a sonic masterpiece that could disrupt the entity's control, that could awaken the town's senses, that could offer a symphony of hope in the midst of despair. The battle was far from over, but a new weapon had been forged, an auditory weapon that could resonate not just with their ears, but with their souls. A weapon that could turn the tide and lead them towards a future where their senses were their own, their auditory world, a symphony of freedom and expression. Chapter 43. The Language of Influence. Ethan's sonic weapon, a symphony of defiance that reverberated through Derry, demonstrated the power of sensory manipulation for positive change. Dr. Thorne, recognizing the potential for a coordinated, counter-offensive, gathered the synesthetes. He saw a newfound confidence in their eyes, a glimmer of hope replacing the despair that had threatened to consume them. It was time, he decided, to harness the most potent weapon they possessed: language. The entity, Thorne began, his voice resonating with a persuasive cadence, is a master of manipulation. It uses language to deceive, to intimidate, to control. But language is not inherently evil. It is a tool, a powerful tool that can be used for good or for ill. It is time to reclaim the language of influence, to use it to persuade, to motivate, to inspire action. He explained that language wasn't just about conveying information. It was about shaping beliefs, evoking emotions, and motivating behavior. Words, Thorne said, are not just symbols. They are catalysts. They have the power to ignite passions, to spark revolutions, to transform the world. By understanding the language of influence, you can become agents of change. You can inspire others to join your cause. You can create a movement that can overcome the entity's darkness. He delved into the art of persuasion, explaining how to use language to appeal to both logic and emotion. To persuade, Thorne said, you must first understand your audience. What are their values? What are their fears? What are their aspirations? Tailor your language to resonate with their deepest needs, their most cherished beliefs. He then explored the power of storytelling, explaining how narratives could captivate the imagination, evoke empathy, and inspire action. Stories, Thorne said, are not just entertainment. They are powerful tools for shaping beliefs and motivating behavior. They allow you to connect with others on a deeper level, to share your experiences, to inspire them to join your cause. He encouraged them to craft their own stories of resilience, of defiance, of hope. Share your stories with the town, Thorne urged. Let them know that they are not alone, that they are not powerless, that they can overcome the entity's influence. Use your stories to inspire courage, to ignite hope, to motivate action. He also emphasized the importance of using language that evoked positive emotions, that instilled confidence, that empowered individuals to take action. The entity uses language to evoke fear and despair, Thorne said. Counter its negativity with words that inspire hope, that instill courage, that empower individuals to believe in themselves and their ability to make a difference. He taught them how to use language to create a sense of community, to foster a shared identity, to build a movement that could challenge the entity's control. Use language to connect with others, Thorne said. Use it to build bridges, to foster understanding, to create a sense of belonging. Together, you are stronger than you are alone. The entity wants you to believe that language is its weapon, Thorne warned, but it's not. Language is your weapon. It is the tool you can use to reclaim your power, to inspire others, to create a future free from its grasp. They were learning to become orators of their own destinies, wielding the language of influence with skill, with passion, with unwavering conviction. They were crafting speeches that ignited courage, stories that inspired hope, and calls to action that resonated with the town's collective desire for freedom. The battle was far from over, but a new weapon had been forged, a weapon of words, a weapon of influence, a weapon that could unite the town, that could inspire defiance, that could lead them towards a future where their voices were their own, their stories a symphony of hope and resilience. Chapter 44. The Visual Vortex. Amelia Green, a visionary artist, perceived the world through a kaleidoscope of colors. Her synesthesia translated sounds into vibrant hues, music into swirling patterns of light and shadow. Crashing Symphony was a tempest of crimson and gold, a gentle lullaby, a tranquil sea of blues and greens. Her art was a visual symphony, a mesmerizing tapestry of color that captured the essence of sound. But in Derry, the entity had corrupted Amelia's gift, twisting her visual world into a terrifying hallucination. The once harmonious colors now clashed in jarring dissonances, the soothing patterns replaced by chaotic swirls of darkness, the tranquil hues by a blinding flash of fear. Yet, amidst this visual nightmare, Amelia discovered a potential weapon. While experimenting with new techniques, trying to find a visual form that could counteract the entity's influence, she stumbled upon a peculiar phenomenon. A specific combination of colors and shapes, arranged in a precise geometric pattern, reacted strangely to the entity's presence. Instead of being distorted, it seemed to draw the entity in, its visual energy trapped within the swirling vortex of colors. Intrigued, Amelia analyzed the pattern, her synesthesia revealing its hidden properties. The visual vortex, she realized, resonated with a frequency that disrupted the entity's control over visual perception. It was a visual trap, a mesmerizing illusion that could capture the entity's attention, drawing it in, holding it captive. She began to work, her brushstrokes guided by her synesthesia, creating a masterpiece of sensory manipulation. She painted, a swirling vortex of colors, a mesmerizing tapestry of light and shadow that pulsed with a hypnotic rhythm. The vortex, a visual representation of the entity's own chaotic energy, seemed to draw the eye in, its vibrant colors swirling and merging, creating a sense of depth and movement that was both alluring and unsettling. Amelia, with trembling hands, unveiled her creation to the other synesthetes. They cautiously approached the painting, their eyes drawn to the swirling vortex, their senses overwhelmed by its hypnotic power. But beneath the initial disorientation, they sensed a glimmer of hope, a feeling of control. They decided to use the painting as a trap, a visual lure to capture the entity's attention, to draw it away from the town, to disrupt its control over their perceptions. They placed the painting in the center of the town square, its vibrant colors a beacon in the midst of despair. The entity, drawn to the painting's hypnotic power, approached the vortex. Its shadowy form seemed to merge with the swirling colors, its energy trapped within the visual illusion. The entity struggled to break free, its power waning as its attention was consumed by the mesmerizing pattern. The townspeople, initially wary of the painting's strange power, gradually began to feel a sense of relief. The entity's influence seemed to diminish as its attention was diverted, its control over their senses weakened. Amelia, with her artistic vision and her unique synesthesia, had found a way to fight back, to use her gift as a weapon against the entity. She had created a visual vortex, a masterpiece of sensory manipulation that could capture the entity's attention, that could disrupt its control, that could offer a visual representation of their collective hope. The battle was far from over, but a new weapon had been forged. A visual weapon that could captivate the eye, that could challenge the entity's power, that could lead them towards a future where their visual world was their own. A canvas of beauty, freedom, and expression. Chapter 45. The final chord. The visual vortex held the entity captive, its swirling colors a mesmerizing prison. But Amelia's masterpiece was only a temporary reprieve. The entity, though weakened, was far from defeated. It thrashed against its visual bonds, its shadowy form attempting to break free, its whispers of fear echoing through the town. Elara, witnessing the entity's struggle, knew that the time had come for a final confrontation. She had spent weeks honing her synesthetic abilities, mastering the art of sensory manipulation, learning to wield her perceptions as weapons. She was no longer the frightened girl who had first heard whispers in the static. She was a warrior, a conductor of her own sensory symphony, ready to face the entity in a climactic battle. She gathered the other synesthetes, their faces etched with determination. They had come so far, fought so hard, and lost so much. But they were not broken. They were united, their synesthesia a symphony of defiance, their collective will a force that could challenge the entity's darkness. Alara, her eyes blazing with a newfound confidence, stepped forward. She closed her eyes, focusing her senses, channeling the energy of her synesthesia. The world around her transformed into a symphony of vibrant colors and swirling patterns. She began to conduct, her movements graceful, yet powerful, her gestures precise and deliberate. She summoned the colors of courage, the sounds of defiance, the textures of resilience, the tastes of hope, the smells of freedom. She wove a tapestry of sensory experiences, a symphony of defiance that resonated with the town's collective consciousness. The entity, sensing Alara's challenge, turned its attention towards her. Its shadowy form pulsed with anger, its whispers intensifying, its control over the town's senses tightening. But Alara was undeterred. She continued to conduct, her synesthesia growing stronger, her symphony of defiance rising in intensity. The battle raged, a clash of sensory perceptions, a war for the soul of Derry. Alara summoned the full force of her synesthetic abilities, her colors blinding the entity, her sounds disrupting its control, her textures repelling its touch, her tastes overwhelming its palate, her smells suffocating its presence. The other synesthetes joined the fray, their synesthesia harmonizing with Alara's, their collective power amplifying her symphony of defiance. Gabriel's shapes shifted and reformed, creating a visual shield that deflected the entity's attacks. Elias's words became weapons, their precise sequence disrupting the entity's control over language. Eleanor's pain transformed into a source of strength, its intensity fueling their resistance. Thomas's mirror-touch synesthesia amplified their collective courage, their shared determination. Isabel's emotions exploded into a vibrant symphony of color, painting the town in hues of hope and resilience. The entity, overwhelmed by the synesthetes' coordinated assault, its senses overloaded, its control shattered, began to weaken. Its shadowy form flickered, its whispers fading, its grip on the town loosening. Alara, sensing the entity's vulnerability, summoned all her remaining strength. She focused her synesthesia into a single powerful chord, a symphony of defiance that resonated with the very essence of their being. The final chord struck the entity with the force of a sonic boom, its energy shattering its form, its vibrations disrupting its core. The entity's shadowy form dissolved, its whispers silenced, its control over Derry broken. A wave of relief washed over the town as the sensory distortions faded, the colors returning to their natural vibrancy, the sounds regaining their harmony, the textures their comforting familiarity. The entity was gone, its reign of terror ended. Alara, exhausted but triumphant, collapsed into Gabriel's arms. The other synesthetes gathered around them, their faces etched with a mixture of relief and joy. They had done it. They had faced their fears, harnessed their gifts, and defeated the entity that had threatened to consume them. The battle was over. But the symphony continued. The synesthetes, their senses now finely tuned, their powers mastered, were no longer just individuals. They were a collective, a symphony of perception, a force for change in a world that desperately needed their unique perspective. They had found their voice, their strength, their purpose. And as the final chord of their symphony echoed through the streets of Derry, they knew that their journey had just begun. Part 5. The Aftermath. Chapter 46. Reintegration. The echoes of the final chord faded, leaving a profound silence in their wake. The entity was gone, its grip on Derry broken, but the town and its inhabitants were forever changed. The synesthetes, their senses heightened, their perceptions altered, now faced the daunting task of reintegrating into a world that no longer felt familiar. Dr. Thorne, his face etched with a mixture of relief and concern, gathered the group. They were battered, exhausted, but their eyes held a newfound clarity, a resilience forged in the fires of adversity. "The battle is over," Thorne began, his voice gentle yet firm. "But the war is not. You have faced your fears. You have harnessed your gifts. You have defeated the entity. But the journey of healing, of reintegration has just begun. He explained that the sensory distortions, the emotional turmoil, the psychological trauma they had endured had left deep imprints on their minds and bodies. Your perceptions have been altered, Thorne said. Your senses have been heightened. Your very understanding of reality has been challenged. Reintegrating into a world that now feels unfamiliar will require patience, compassion, and a willingness to embrace the new you. He guided them through a process of sensory recalibration, helping them adjust to the heightened sensitivity of their synesthesia. Your senses are now finely tuned, Thorne explained. You perceive nuances, subtleties that others miss. This can be a gift, but it can also be overwhelming. You must learn to manage this heightened sensitivity, to find a balance between awareness and overload. He taught them techniques for grounding, for anchoring themselves in the present moment, for filtering out distractions. Focus on your breath, Thorne instructed. Feel the ground beneath your feet. Engage your senses in a mindful way, paying attention to the details of your surroundings without judgment. He also guided them through a process of emotional reintegration, helping them process the trauma they had endured, to heal the emotional wounds that lingered. The entity's influence has left scars, Thorne acknowledged. You may experience flashbacks, nightmares, anxiety. These are normal reactions to trauma. Don't be afraid to seek support, to talk about your experiences, to allow yourselves to heal. He encouraged them to connect with each other, to share their stories, to offer mutual support and understanding. You are not alone, Thorne reminded them. You have each other. You have a community that understands what you've been through, that can offer you the love and support you need to heal. He also emphasized the importance of self-care, of prioritizing their physical and mental well-being. Take time to rest, Thorne said. Nourish your bodies with healthy food. Engage in activities that bring you joy, that connect you with your passions, that remind you of the beauty and wonder of life. He stressed that reintegration was not a linear process, that there would be setbacks, challenges, moments of doubt and fear. But don't give up, Thorne urged. You have come too far, fought too hard to succumb to the shadows now. You have the strength, the resilience, the support you need to rebuild your lives, to create a future filled with hope, purpose, and meaning. They were learning to navigate a new reality, a world where their synesthesia was not a curse, but a gift, a source of strength, creativity, and connection. The battle was over, but the journey continued. They were survivors, healers, warriors, artists, creators. And as they embarked on the path of reintegration, they carried with them the wisdom, the courage, the compassion they had gained in the heart of the sensory storm. Chapter 47. The Scars Remain. The entity was gone, banished from Derry, its symphony of terror silenced. But the echoes of its influence lingered, the psychological scars of sensory trauma etched deep within the synesthetes' minds. Reintegration, they discovered, was not a smooth, linear process. It was a journey fraught with challenges, setbacks, and the lingering ghosts of their ordeal. Alara, though hailed as a hero, found herself struggling with the aftermath of the sensory battle. The vibrant colors that had once filled her world now seemed muted, their intensity dulled by the memory of the entity's distortions. The whispers in the static, once a source of fear, now haunted her with a chilling silence, a constant reminder of the darkness that had threatened to consume her. Gabriel, despite his newfound confidence, found himself plagued by phantom shapes, the grotesque forms of the entity's influence lurking in the corners of his vision. He struggled to trust his perceptions, his once clear geometric world now tainted by the memory of the entity's distortions. Elias, the writer, found his words flowing again, but the entity's linguistic possession had left a lingering mark. He struggled to find his voice, his once eloquent prose now punctuated by moments of doubt, his narratives haunted by the echoes of the entity's twisted tales. Eleanor, the nurse, still saw the personification of pain, but the faces were no longer grotesque. They were the faces of her friends, her family, the townspeople she had cared for, their suffering a constant reminder of the entity's cruelty. Thomas, the doctor, could no longer touch his patients without feeling the phantom echoes of their pain. the entity's amplification of their suffering, a haunting reminder of his own vulnerability. Isabel, the painter, found her colors vibrant again, but the memory of the emotion color explosion lingered, a shadow over her artistic vision. She struggled to express joy without fear of it turning into a sickly green, to paint love without it being tainted by the memory of despair. Even Dr. Thorne, the seemingly unflappable expert, found himself grappling with the aftermath of the entity's influence. He questioned his own judgment, his own methods, wondering if he could have done more to protect the synesthetes, to prevent the suffering they had endured. The scars were not just individual, they were collective. The town of Derry, once a vibrant community, now bore the marks of the entity's reign of terror. The streets were quieter, the laughter of children less carefree, the shadows deeper. But amidst the scars, there was also resilience. The synesthetes, bound by their shared experience, their shared trauma, found solace in each other's company. They gathered regularly, sharing their struggles, offering support, reminding each other that they were not alone. They began to rebuild their lives, their community, their sense of self. They used their synesthesia not just as a weapon, but as a tool for healing, for connection, for creating a new reality based on empathy, understanding, and shared humanity. The scars remained, a reminder of the darkness they had faced, but they were also a testament to their strength, their resilience, their unwavering determination to heal, to grow, to create a future where the entity's influence would be nothing but a distant memory. Chapter 48. Anchoring Positive States. The scars of the entity's reign were deep, a constant reminder of the trauma they had endured. But Dr. Thorne knew that healing wasn't just about addressing the negative. It was also about cultivating the positive. He gathered the synesthetes, their faces etched with a mixture of resilience and vulnerability, and spoke of anchoring positive states. "You have faced darkness," Thorne began, his voice warm and reassuring. "But you have also found strength. You have experienced pain. You have also discovered compassion. You have confronted fear, but you have also found courage. These positive experiences, these moments of resilience, are your anchors, your foundation for future well-being." He explained that anchoring positive states was a way to create a reservoir of inner strength, a source of comfort and resilience that they could access in times of need. By consciously associating positive emotions and experiences with specific triggers, Thorne said, you can create a network of anchors that will support you on your journey of healing and growth. He guided them through a process of identifying their positive anchors, the moments of joy, love, connection, and peace that had sustained them through the ordeal. "What are the memories that bring you comfort?" Thorne asked. "What are the experiences that make you feel strong? What are the sensations that evoke a sense of peace?" He encouraged them to revisit these positive anchors, to relive them in their minds, to engage all their senses, to amplify the positive emotions associated with them. "Don't just remember them," Thorne said. "Feel them, see them, hear them, taste them, smell it. Make them real in your mind, in your heart, in your very soul." He then taught them how to anchor these positive states to specific triggers, sensory cues that they could easily access in moments of need. "Choose a trigger that is meaningful to you," Thorne instructed. "It could be a physical touch, a visual image, a sound, a smell, a taste, or even a word or phrase. The key is to choose something that you can easily recall and that evokes a strong, positive association." He guided them through the process of anchoring, demonstrating how to pair the trigger with the peak of the positive emotional experience. "As you relive the positive memory," Thorne said, "activate your trigger. Hold it, feel it, see it, hear it, taste it, smell it. Repeat this process several times, strengthening the connection between the trigger and the positive emotion." He emphasized the importance of practicing anchoring regularly, of creating a network of positive anchors that they could access in different situations, for different needs. "The more you practice," Thorne explained, "the stronger your anchors will become. They will become your allies, your sources of strength, your reminders of the resilience and beauty that resides within you." He also encouraged them to share their positive anchors with each other, to create a collective web of support and inspiration. By sharing your anchors, Thorne said, you can amplify their power. You can create a ripple effect of positivity that can spread throughout your community, your world. The entity wanted you to believe that darkness was all there was, Thorne reminded them. But you have found light within yourselves, within each other. You have discovered the power of hope, the resilience of the human spirit. These positive anchors are your testament to that truth. They are your foundation for a future filled with joy, love, connection, and unwavering well-being. They were learning to become anchors of their own destinies, empowered by the positive experiences that had sustained them, the memories that brought them comfort, the sensations that evoked a sense of peace. The battle was over, but the journey of healing continued. They were survivors, healers, warriors, artists, creators. And as they anchored themselves in the positive, they created a foundation for a future where the entity's darkness would be forever overshadowed by the radiant light of their own inner strength. Chapter 49. The future unfolds. The scars remained, a reminder of the darkness they had faced, but they no longer defined them. The synesthetes, empowered by their newfound understanding of themselves, their gifts, and their collective strength, began to envision a future where their synesthesia was not a burden, but a source of creativity, connection, and positive change. Alara, no longer haunted by the whispers and the static, embraced her heightened senses, using her synesthesia to create art that captured the vibrant symphony of the world. Her paintings, a mesmerizing blend of color and sound, became a source of inspiration and healing for the town, testament to the beauty that could emerge from darkness. Gabriel, his geometric world no longer distorted by the entity's influence, used his spatial awareness to design buildings that fostered harmony and connection. His architecture, a symphony of form and function, became a testament to the power of human creativity to shape the environment, to create spaces that nurtured the spirit and fostered a sense of belonging. Elias, his words freed from the entity's possession, found his voice again, his writing a powerful instrument for healing and transformation. His stories, infused with empathy and understanding, became a source of solace and inspiration for the town, a testament to the power of language to connect, to heal, to inspire. Eleanor, her personification of pain, now a source of empathy rather than fear, dedicated herself to helping others heal from trauma. She used her synesthesia to understand their suffering on a visceral level, to offer compassion and support, to guide them towards a future where pain was no longer a prison, but a catalyst for growth. Thomas, his mirror-touch synesthesia now, a source of connection rather than torment, became a beacon of empathy in the medical community. He used his gift to connect with his patients on a deeper level, to understand their pain, to offer comfort and healing, to remind them that they were not alone in their suffering. Isabel, her emotion-color synesthesia now a source of vibrant expression, used her art to paint a new vision for Derry, a world where emotions were celebrated, where differences were embraced, where the human experience was honored in all its complexity. Even Dr. Thorne, his confidence renewed, embraced his role as a mentor and guide, sharing his knowledge of synesthesia and the power of the mind with the world. He became a champion for those who were different, a voice for the misunderstood, a beacon of hope in a world that often feared what it didn't understand. Together, the synesthetes of Derry created a new reality, a world where their gifts were not a source of isolation, but a bridge to connection, a catalyst for creativity, a tool for healing. They formed a community, a support network, a collective force for positive change. They organized workshops, sharing their experiences with others, teaching them how to harness their synesthesia, how to overcome challenges, how to create a life of purpose and meaning. They became mentors, guides, and advocates, inspiring others to embrace their differences, to celebrate their unique perspectives, to use their gifts to make the world a better place. The future unfolded before them, a tapestry woven from their collective vision, their shared dreams, their unwavering belief in the power of human connection. They had faced darkness, but they had emerged stronger, more compassionate, more determined than ever to create a future where synesthesia was not a curse but a gift, a source of wonder, a symphony of human potential. Chapter 50. The echoes remain. Years passed. The scars of the entity's reign faded, replaced by the vibrant tapestry of a town reborn. Derry was no longer haunted by the symphony of terror. It resonated with a new melody, a symphony of the senses, a blend of beauty and terror, a testament to the enduring power and fragility of perception. The synesthetes, once outcasts, were now integral members of the community, their gifts celebrated, their experiences honored. Alara's art adorned the town square, her vibrant canvases a constant reminder of the beauty that could emerge from darkness. Gabriel's buildings, with their harmonious forms and flowing spaces, fostered a sense of connection and belonging. Elias's stories, filled with empathy and wisdom, were shared around campfires, their words weaving a tapestry of shared experiences and collective healing. Eleanor, the town's beloved nurse, continued to use her gift to heal, her touch a source of comfort and understanding. Thomas, the empathetic doctor, was sought out by patients from far and wide, his ability to feel their pain a testament to his compassion and skill. Isabel's murals, a vibrant expression of emotions, adorned the walls of the newly built community center, a testament to the power of art to heal and inspire. Dr. Thorne, his hair now streaked with silver, watched the town's transformation with a quiet sense of pride. He had witnessed the darkness, the despair, the very depths of human vulnerability, but he had also witnessed the resilience, the courage, the unwavering strength of the human spirit. The entity's influence was not entirely forgotten. The echoes of its terror lingered in the shadows, a reminder of the fragility of perception, the ease with which reality could be distorted, the ever-present potential for darkness to resurface. But the town was no longer naive. They had learned the hard way, through pain and loss, the importance of vigilance, the power of unity, the necessity of embracing their differences, of celebrating their unique perspectives. The symphony of the senses continued, a constant reminder of the power and fragility of perception, the whispers in the static, the phantom shapes, the distorted taste, chilling touch, the suffocating smells, the chaotic colors. They were all part of the symphony, a testament to the entity's influence, a reminder of the darkness they had overcome. But now the symphony was richer, more complex, more nuanced. It was the symphony of resilience, of hope, of the enduring human spirit. It was a symphony that celebrated the beauty and the terror, the light and the darkness, the fragility and the strength of human perception. And as the symphony of the senses played on, the people of Derry listened, not with fear, but with a newfound understanding, a deep appreciation for the power and fragility of their own perceptions, their own realities, their own place in the grand symphony of existence. They knew that the echoes of the entity would always remain, but they also knew that they had the strength, the resilience, the collective will to face any darkness that might arise, to continue creating a future filled with hope, beauty, and the unwavering belief in the power of human connection. Epilogue. The wind whispered through the pines, carrying the scent of pine needles and damp earth, a familiar symphony of Derry. Elara sat on her porch swing, the worn wood smooth beneath her fingertips. The static on the old radio crackled, a comforting white noise that no longer held any whispers of fear. Years had passed since the entity's reign of terror. The scars remained, faint echoes in the quiet corners of their minds, but they no longer defined them. Derry had healed, its community stronger, its spirit renewed. The synesthetes, once outcasts, were now woven into the fabric of the town, their gifts celebrated, their experiences shared. Elara closed her eyes, listening to the symphony of the town. The laughter of children playing in the distance, the rhythmic clang of the blacksmith's hammer, the gentle strumming of a guitar from an open window, each sound a vibrant color, a swirling pattern in her mind's eye. She thought of Gabriel, his architectural creations gracing the town with their harmonious forms, spaces designed to foster connection and belonging. She thought of Elias, his words flowing freely now, his stories weaving a tapestry of shared experiences, his voice a beacon of hope and understanding. She smiled, remembering Eleanor's gentle touch, her ability to see the personification of pain now a source of empathy and healing. She thought of Thomas, his mirror-touch synesthesia a bridge to his patients, his compassion a guiding light in the medical community. And she thought of Isabel, her vibrant murals transforming the town into a canvas of shared emotions, a testament to the power of art to heal and inspire. Even Dr. Thorne, now a respected elder in the community, continued to share his wisdom, his knowledge of the mind, a guiding force for those seeking to understand their own unique perceptions. The entities, darkness had inadvertently brought them together, forging a bond of shared experience, a community of acceptance. They had faced the abyss, stared into the heart of fear, and emerged stronger, more compassionate, more connected than ever before. The symphony of the senses continued, a testament to the enduring power and fragility of perception. But now, it was a symphony infused with a newfound appreciation for the beauty and the terror, the light and the darkness, the vulnerability and the strength of the human experience. Alara opened her eyes, the setting sun painting the sky in a symphony of orange and purple. The wind chimes on her porch tinkled a gentle melody, a reminder of the delicate balance between harmony and dissonance, between reality and perception. The echoes of the entity remained, a whisper in the wind, a flicker in the shadows. But they no longer held power over them. They were a reminder, a cautionary tale, a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit. And as the symphony of Derry played on, Alara knew that they were ready for whatever the future might hold. Their senses attuned, their hearts open, their spirits united in the symphony of life.